Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Oklahoma City Planning Commission for Thursday, January 23rd. If you have a cell phone with you now, it'd be a great time to turn it off. I'm doing that. Please. For those of you who don't come down here every other Thursday, I'll explain just a little bit about what we do and how this works. If you wish to speak on an item today, you'll find a form like this on the table out in the hallway. If you'll fill it out with your name and address and the simple information that it's asking for, that would help us a lot to kind of keep things straight and keep the meeting moving. Also, for those of you who have bad backs, I'll just say there are a few cushions out there available. These are not the most comfortable pews in the world, but and on that same note, I will say I'm guessing that a whole bunch of you folks are here to be heard on item number 20. It's going to be a while before we get to that. I'm not encouraging you to mill around too much, but we will take like a 5-minute break before we hear that. So that will be plenty of time for everybody to get back in and get seated if they want to. So if you would rather get up and go out and walk and do something else rather than sit on those not very comfortable pews for the time that intervenes, you're welcome to do that. So we have a little bit of housekeeping here at the beginning to take care of. We'll hear the consent agenda, which are items that are don't have really protest maybe, and are fairly routine, and we vote on them as a block. There are a handful of those. When we get to the items to be heard, what we'll do is ask each person, applicant, to come forward, give us their name and address, tell us what it is they're asking us for. We may ask them some questions. We may talk amongst ourselves. If there's anybody here who wants to be heard on that item, we'll ask them to come forward and go through the same drill, name and address, what they're here for, so on. And then we'll discuss that perhaps and call each item for a vote in turn and move along. So let's start. The first item of business is the receipt of the minutes from the January 9th meeting.
Move approval of minutes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to receive the minutes of the January 9th, 2020 meeting. Cast your votes, please. They are received. Continuance requests.
We have several uncontested requests. Item 29 is PUD 1746, request to defer till February 13th. Item 30, defer to February 13th as well. Item 31, PUD 1750 to February 13th. Item 32, SPUD 1172, defer to February 27th. Item 33, SPUD 1170, defer to February 27th. Item 34, SPUD 1189, defer to February 27th. Item 35, CE 979, defer to April 23rd. Item 36, SPUD 1183, has been withdrawn.
Is there anybody present who wanted to be heard on any of those items?
Madam Chair, may I add one item to that list?
I don't think we're not there yet.
Okay,
are
just
we?
want to check.
We haven't done the new continuances just yet. If not, I'll take a motion and a second.
Move to continue the items as read.
Second.
Yeah, that's right here. So it's a new request.
Okay. I have a motion and a second to continue items 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, and 36. Cast your votes, please. Actually, 36 is being withdrawn. Those items are approved for continuance and or withdrawal.
We have several new requests as well. Item 5, PUD 1592A, deferred to February 13th. Item 19, PC 10638, deferred to February 27th. Item 21, SPUD 1169, deferred to March 26th. Item 24, defer to February 27th. Item 25 to February 27th. Item 26, PD 1742, defer to February 13th. And item 27, defer to February 13th.
I do have someone signed up to speak on item number 19. I'm sorry, Terry Botchlitz? I think we're about to continue that item. Do you wish to be heard today, or?
Well, if we're going to continue it, I'll be heard at that time.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else here today who wants to be heard on items 5, 12, I'm sorry, now's your time.
I'd like to add item 12, to be continued to the February 13th meeting, and I have spoken with the developer and Councilwoman Nice, and we are going to have some community meetings about that issue between now and the time of the next meeting.
Okay, this is item number 12, PUD. I'm sorry, this is item number 12, PUD 1749, rezoning at 3501 Northeast 10th Street. So we're adding it to the list of requested continuances. If there's anybody who wishes to be heard on items 5, 12, 19, 21, 24, 25, 26, or 27.
I have a question. Is the applicant for item number 5 here? Was this requested continuance by the applicant?
Yes. We believed it was going to be on the February 13th docket. My client is based out of Chicago and had previous travel plans that did not allow him to be here today.
Okay. I think there may be some questions about item 12, maybe? Yes, we're going to, so Councilwoman Nice and I had a conversation with the developer. We would like to have a meeting with the community before there is a vote with the commission. So we are going to meet with the community on February 3rd. My guess is that there might be some concerns about it, and we share those concerns, and so this is an opportunity for all of us to address those concerns. If you can share your contact information, let me get back with you about the exact location, because I don't have the address, but I know that if you contact Councilwoman Nice's office, we can tell you where that's going to be.
Anybody else? If not, I'll take a motion.
I make the motion to approve continuances of items 5, 12, 19, 21, 24, 25, 26, and 27.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to continue items 5, 12, 19, 21, 24, 25, 26, and 27. Would you cast your votes, please? Those items are continued. Is the easiest way for these folks to make themselves known to you just for them to contact Councilwoman Nice's office?
That would be the best thing, to make sure that we don't miss anybody.
Okay. Okay, our consent agenda, we do have someone signed up to speak on one of these items. If you'll read them for us, please.
Item 1 is a final plat of Falling Springs, Section 4. That's located south of Northwest 150th Street and west of Rockwell Avenue. Item 2, final plat of Tuscany Lakes, Phase 1, located west of west of North County Line Road and north of Northwest 122nd Street. Item 3, final plat of The Brook, Phase 2, located north of West Memorial Road and west of North Piedmont Road. And item 4, final plat of Pembroke Addition, located south of West Wilshire Boulevard and east North County Line Road.
I do have someone signed up to speak on item number 3, Marlene Smith. Did you wish to speak on this item?
I just had a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Give us your name and address for the record.
Marlene Smith, I'm at 13801 The Brook Boulevard, Piedmont, Oklahoma. My first question is, I wanted to know if there would be another entrance going into the addition prior to construction or when it would be done. The construction crew would have to basically be going through the majority of the existing neighborhood, and it would go right past our only playground, and we have a lot of children already in the existing.
What's your other question?
I was just also wanting to know who the builder was, if it's going to be a D.R. Horton Homes or another Homes. I don't know who the...
So I'm inclined to maybe, unless you can answer those questions very quickly, we'll just pull this off the consent agenda.
I'll be happy to give her the name of the builders after we hear this. There is another entrance coming in off of Piedmont Road through an easement, so there'll be a second entrance required by fire department.
Does that satisfy your, okay, okay. Is there anybody else who wishes to be heard on items 1, 2, 3, or 4? If not, I'll take a motion.
Move approval of items 1 through 4 on the consent docket.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve items number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Cast your votes, please. They are approved.
Item 5 has been continued. Item 6 is a preliminary plat of the Grove, Phase 14, and that's located west of North Portland Avenue and south of Northwest 192nd Street.
Good afternoon, Tim Johnson here on behalf of the applicant. This is Phase 14. If you were to zoom out, you'd see that this development has been going on for several years, and it's almost fully developed with the exception of the commercial land. It's been very successful. They have a lot of open space, common area, and walking trails throughout the addition. With regard to the TEs, we can agree to 1, 2, and 3. I would like to make a comment on 4. 4 calls for landscaping around the perimeter of the plat, which is applicable for section line roads. But in this case, we're butting up against Portland, which is now upgraded to highway standard. And that would apply to the sidewalk TE6 as well. We're not normally required to landscape people's backyards adjacent to the highway, nor put a sidewalk in the highway right-of-way. So I'd like to ask for 4 and 6 to be removed, as well as TE number 5. TE number 5, this is the first time I've seen it. It was in the staff report that we got. We didn't have time for our client to discuss with his attorney. This has to do with the crossings of the pipeline. Because this property was riddled with pipelines, all these red circles, if you can see them, are existing and proposed, or existing, with the exception of this one, crossings that have been put in with public streets. The way that we read this language, they want us to, we've already provided the agreement to staff that we have with the pipeline company that allows us to construct over their pipeline, which is what we've done in every other location. We do not want to make that piece of the street private, which is what the TE recommends. Just inconsistent in maintenance. It puts a burden on the homeowners association for maintaining a piece of public street that should be public. So I'd ask for that TE to be removed as well, and I'd ask the staff if they would vet this with the development community, so because this happens everywhere. There are thousands of these that I've been involved with. And so this is something new to us. I don't know if it's been something going on for a while or what.
I've never seen this in any of our staff reports before, so since this is my word, I'll say that.
Yeah, it's new to me as well. Does staff want to speak to this issue?
It is fairly new. It's a concern that comes from the municipal counselor's office that they do have an agreement with the developer, but what we're looking for is either the street to be private at that location or an agreement with the city to hold the city harmless. So if you want to leave the TE in and we could come up with something with final plat, before the final plat,
That'd be acceptable.
okay. And we can agree to take out the other two TEs. I think we meant to do that anyway.
So you're okay with removing TEs 4 and 6?
Can we remove 5 and then add it back in at final plat? Is that what you said?
I think he said just the opposite. We're going to leave it in now and
I
figure it out.
prefer to leave it in, we'll just
on final plat.
address it again at the final plat.
So, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. This all stemmed from one case where there was a specific agreement with One Oak that had different language than a typical pipeline easement has, and that particular developer was not willing at the dedication stage at City Council to come up with language that would hold the city harmless. And so the City Council kept deferring the item. Eventually, the attorney for the developer and the attorney for One Oak came up with some language to make that agreement acceptable to the city, but the city still didn't want to accept it. So what they ended up doing is that client ended up creating a stretch of private street and then is going to gate it, which makes no sense. If you imagine a giant neighborhood like this that is 640 acres, and every single street in here is public, and you're going to include one little stretch of private streets, that is going to be a maintenance nightmare. I'm not sure what a city contractor is going to do in the future when they're going to repave these streets. So it makes no sense.
Well, wait just a second. So, Tim, has this issue come up in the Grove before?
No.
But I'm saying, are there instances
Yes.
where this exists within the Grove?
Yes.
So all the red circles?
We can't see the red circles.
Yeah, they're really hard to see. So those aren't the ones that are at issue today, because we're looking at the orange. The only one that's at issue today is the one that's on the top left in the orange area. The rest of those have already been approved?
Yeah, this is phase 14, but it's really phase 18 because there was plats of the Grove South that had 4 separate. So this is really the 18th phase. And so for it to come up on the 18th phase of a section development where there's identical conditions that already exist makes absolutely no sense. We can't agree to it. Tim retracts his earlier statement.
Well, I wouldn't agree to it either. I wouldn't agree to it either, because what's going to happen is it's going to come back at final plat, and that note will have been in there, and for all we know, that's 2 years from now, and it's different people up here, and they're going to say what we always say, right, which is that final plats, we just assume that all those issues got done, and as long as it conforms to the subdivision regulations, we're going to try to prove it, and we're going to be very apprehensive about amending it. So I don't like that solution at all. What I'm a little concerned about is I think the city has the right at some point to change. I think phase 14 of a development is maybe a bad place to pick a start. But what are the other alternatives here, JJ? Because this is going to be hard to get behind at this, because I'm with them. This seems silly.
Well, other than making the little sections private, just a written agreement with the city to hold us harmless. They don't have to make the streets private.
Is the issue
working on that?
Is the real issue just that we're
holding you harmless? The developer or the pipeline company?
Pipeline.
And they're not here.
What are the odds that a pipeline company is going to execute a document like this? I can't imagine very high.
They'll never do
0.
Yeah.
And this condition exists all over Oklahoma.
And you're building a street over it. You're not proposing to put structures or anything else.
That's
This
right.
is just about a
And
right-of-way.
we're going to have to
and
meet whatever standards they require in terms of depth of piping and cover and all of those things.
I'd like to add, in the cases where the pipe wasn't at a sufficient depth, according to the Corporation Commission standards, the developer paid the pipeline company to lower the pipeline, and that's all been done. So we're consistent throughout the development that we maintained a certain cover over the pipeline at their request.
So, school me a little bit here. What keeps this from becoming a big nightmare for the city later? Is it because it's just incumbent upon the developer to deal with it on the front end through agreements like you're talking about, where you go ahead and get the pipeline lowered if you need to and that sort of thing? Because if you don't do that now and get it worked out, then it just jumps up and bites you later.
If we don't do it now, the pipeline company won't allow us to put a street on top of their pipeline.
Okay.
That's why we do it up front.
Is this the first instance of this? We agree that it's relatively new. Is this the first instance of this you've seen in an application for a plat like this?
What I was describing happened about a month ago.
Okay, so is this the first time this has been included in something like this? Okay. Then I got to say, I think this is it's a little bit like getting blindsided. I mean, to do something like this and try to hold the whole thing up when we've been approving it through 14 phases because we think it's an issue that we have, I think crosses a line for me. I think now people are kind of on notice about it. I think having a way to try to work these things out is, if the city feels like it's important, I think they need to get the word out, because waiting for an instance like this and then putting this language in the TE, I mean, I just have a big question mark in my packet next to this. So
Yeah,
I'm trying
I think from our point of view, if this is an issue that is problematic and requires some shift in procedures or policies, then, we'd like to be kind of informed and brought along on that before
Amen.
It just appears in a staff report. But I would also agree with Mr. Johnson's suggestion that if this is something the city is feeling concern about on a bigger scale, that they need to reach out to the development community and figure out a way to solve that problem. I'm not in favor of there suddenly being a little patch of private street in between two stretches of public street. That doesn't sound like a solution to me. So
Well,
I do have somebody who signed up to speak.
okay, well, let's do that.
Kara McBride. Could you give us your name and address for the record, please?
Kara McBride, 3104 Northwest 184th Terrace. Allow me to apologize in advance. This may not be the proper forum for the concerns that I have to raise, and they don't relate to the potential privatization of a small part of the road within the Grove neighborhood. I am a resident of the Grove, and this relates instead to a request on behalf of the residents to allocate a larger section of land to a certain common area that's designated. It's the southernmost common area on the plat as shown. It is, yes, there at the southernmost point. Would you like me to proceed with my statements?
Yes, keep going.
Okay. This common area is currently set aside by the developer Caliber for development by the residents at some future date, at the point that development has ceased and the control of the HOA has been passed to the residents. We've requested that they set the land aside and not develop it, maintaining it instead as sort of a recreational green space / soccer field type space, so that when we gain control of our HOA, we can use the funds that we receive from dues to construct additional amenities, possibly an additional pool or splash pad or something of that nature. I have received this morning from the liaison between Caliber and the neighborhood a proposed rendering of how the common area could be used. The issue with the common area, although it is about 1.93 acres, is that it's subject to 2 easements that would vastly limit our ability to develop any sort of property on top of it, including the parking lot. And I apologize, I don't have anything blown up. I was limited to my inkjet printer. And I don't know whether there's any way for me to show this to you all. They have sent us over a rendering by their engineer that shows a parking lot that includes 15 spaces, a property that could be erected for bathrooms, and a proposed pool. The concerns that I and a few other residents I've had the chance to confer with have is that the parking will not be adequate and that the space between the pool and the fence lines for the 2 lots that are facing Autumn Grove is not adequate to allow for proper fencing for liability reasons around the pool, an adequate walkway, and aesthetic and nuisance concerns. The proposal that I've forwarded on to the neighborhood liaison, Jared Tarver, includes inclusion of 1 or both adjoining lots on the cul-de-sac in the common area. I've used Photoshop in my home computer to try to show how inclusion of 1 of the lots, the one that is directly west of the designated common area and marked with the number 14 on the plat, could allow for the addition of 9 more parking spots for a total of 24, which would be more in alignment with the number of parking spots that's allowed for the current amenities that include a pool at our north and south clubhouses. This would also allow for a further setback of the proposed 40 by 80-foot pool area from those fence lines, permitting for some green space and potential landscaping, which would reduce the chances of nuisance or noise problems for the residents of those lots and increase the aesthetic appeal of the amenity for the neighborhood in the future should we be able to construct it. I realize that... Yes.
If you want to start over on this end and give him whatever drawings or whatever you have, I want to be sure I understand what it is you're asking.
Okay. I'll circulate it for you.
I want to be sure I understand what it is you're asking us for.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it that they're wanting to give you this common area with something developed on it and you don't want them to do that? Or
no.
Is it that they're telling you it has to be developed for one thing and you want to do something different with it? Or
they're reserving the land and not developing anything on it at our request. The reason that we've asked them to do this is that they've stated that they will not be installing any more pools, clubhouses, or other common facilities beyond a playground that has already been constructed, which we requested and greatly appreciate their supplying.
so they've constructed all the amenities they're going to construct?
As I understand it, that is true.
Okay, and so then you're wanting them to give you a little bit more land so that you can do with this property what you think you'd like to do with it?
That's correct.
Did I say that? That's what you're here asking us for?
Yes, I'm asking for an adjustment to the proposed plat to include the lot that's currently marked 14 that's directly west of the southernmost common area within the common area designation rather than that being sold to a builder or homeowner as a lot for development of a home.
Just 14 or 14 and 11?
14 and 11 would be great. I received this rendering at 11:14 this morning. I haven't had a lot of time to process this or run it through the neighborhood. I've posted it to the Facebook page. I've contacted our neighborhood rep who wasn't able to be here today, Joshua Westmoreland. He's in agreement with my proposed rendering that would include only lot 14. I don't know the procedure here and whether this is something that needs to be fixed at this stage or can be adjusted between now and the final plat. I appreciate everyone entertaining me and being willing to listen to our concerns at this phase.
This is what we're here to talk about. Mr. Box,
Yep.
Did you have thoughts you wanted to share with us on this topic?
Sure. So, Ms. Powers, you'll remember the zoning of this property. This was a large PUD. It encompassed the entire 640 acres, came in same time frame as Valencia, which is also a 640-acre PUD to the east of May. What Caliber did in the Grove is, I think, unique and unlike any other developer of this large. They've actually spent in excess of $3 million within their common areas to date. There are two separate clubhouses. There's a clubhouse up here. The clubhouse has playground equipment and a pool. There's a clubhouse and pool down here as well to serve the Grove South. What Matt Austin, who's the president of Caliber Development, and I spoke earlier, what they're agreeing to do is to keep some common area here so that if the HOA at some point wants to go build something, they can do so. But I believe they have more than exceeded their obligation as a developer in providing amenities and common area.
I don't think they're asking you to provide the amenities.
Yeah, well, we're not willing to give up additional lots. It's not necessary.
Even one?
Not even one.
Okay, that's where we are. Commissioners.
It's my ward. I'll take the lead. I think I'm with council on this for the applicant in that we're in phase 14. There's been lots of acreage set aside. We're told in our staff report that it conforms with the overall plat for developments between 101 and 200 lots. We're told that they've met the green space requirements. They have to submit a letter indicating any recreational amenities plan. All these things are a part of that formal process. So they've met those guidelines, I think, to come in at this point and say, oh, by the way, we need you to give up lots you intended to sell. This may seem harsh, but at this point, I think if I'm in your shoes and your HOA is interested in those lots, I think I'd call the developer and try to acquire them. That's certainly within your rights to do that. But at this stage, wouldn't be in favor of eliminating 2 lots and trying to increase common area when they've met the obligations of the subdivision regulations. So unless anybody else has a different thought or comments on it, I'm prepared to make a motion so we can move the item. Seeing none with that, I'll make
Yes, you may.
And again, admitting my ignorance of the process, I am aware that Oklahoma City has required developers within city limits who are erecting new neighborhoods to provide certain amenities in the way of parks and playground type facilities on behalf of the residents of those neighborhoods. And although I realize this is not intended to be developed as a playground, it is a green space, are the requirements that you're referring to those requirements when you say that they have met all of the requirements in the earlier phases of this process?
Yeah, if they came in and they had not, within this phase, met their requirements, that would be reflected in our report. So let's say they hadn't met the green space requirements, that would be reflected in this report. So we would be told that, and that would give us cause to say, wait a minute, you can't, you're going to have to meet these, because at this stage of the game, we're simply looking at whether or not the plat conforms with the subdivision regulations. Mm-hmm. And if it does, there's not a request for a variance here. They're not asking for a variance from the green space requirement or something like that, which would obviously alter our perspective on it.
Is there any indication in the green space requirements of whether green space is encumbered by an easement or not, so long as it can be maintained as green space and as much as a pipeline easement can have grass growing over it?
Well, it's essentially open space. Like in the back corner of my neighborhood, there's a common area space that's really no common area space at all. It's a patch of grass with trees planted, right? Because they had met their amenity requirements in other areas. And so the city's green space requirement is actually pretty abundant, I think, because you find these neighborhoods where you have lots with nothing but grass, but they're common area spaces that are in between two lots, which seem, frankly, a little out of place.
Is this an appropriate forum for me to be educated on the requirements of setback for something like a neighborhood pool from the lot lines of pool?
I think we'd refer you to staff for that, you know, about what would really be involved.
Is that something only retained, or only found in the neighborhood's covenants, or is there a city ordinance that relates to that type of requirement that you all are aware of?
What the amenities are is not specified by the city's requirements. So whether it's a pool or whether it's a playground, that's not something that we require one way or the other. Like I don't think we have any requirements to
There's
build
a copy
pools.
of the subdivision regulations on the MuniCode website that you can certainly go out and take a peek at.
In keeping with
okc.gov.
with Commissioner Craven's comments, our staff report tells us that the size of this plat would require 1.21 acres, so 1.25 acres of open space, with about half of that devoted to recreational improvements. The developer is providing 7.25 acres.
Well, I'm sure looking at the size of the common areas, assuming this is, and I'm sure it is to scale, if that lower portion that we're discussing today is 1.93 acres, including the sizable amount that's covered by easements, which stretch from this diagonal lot directly to the west outward, following those diagonal lines, I'm sure that is the case. With regard to Council Member Craven's suggestion that we look into purchasing the land, that was something that was discussed. I don't understand how we'll be able to do that short of a special assessment, and even if we were to have a special assessment, we would have to reach an agreement with the developer who's in complete control of the entirety of the HOA and its funds and its budget as to actually using that special assessment for the purchase of Lot 14. I do feel like, and I know this is commonplace with developers who are still developing neighborhoods, our hands are somewhat tied, although we have been very fortunate in having a helpful liaison in Mr. Tarver and an understanding developer in caliber up to this point, at least since I moved into the neighborhood in 2017. I do know when I moved.
I understand.
I think that's an valid observation. Until the developer is at the place where they're turning over property to the homeowners association, they retain control. I mean, it is set up for that purpose. So.
And my concern is, having lived in a neighborhood previously that I moved into after development had ceased, we had approximately 650 homes. We had plenty of money from our HOA dues to develop additional amenities, but no space on which to do it that was sufficient for access, for parking, et cetera. And we were interested in putting in a pool or splash pad, but didn't have any place to do it short of buying someone's home and knocking it down. And that's why we're trying at this stage of the process to secure an area of land that's adequate for our future plans, understanding that Caliber has denied our request to actually install an additional amenity, and I realize that we haven't come here with numbers to indicate whether another pool or splash pad or something of that nature is actually necessary to the extent anyone can ever deem such a thing necessary. But my understanding is that Councilman Cravens doesn't feel that this is something that should be adjusted at this point, because the question for this hearing today is whether the plat as submitted comports with the requirements that have previously been a part of this process, of which I was unaware by way of my own social ignorance and not because I'm sure of a lack of public record of the same.
Well, no, I think this is a preliminary plat. You're in the right place at the right time. I wouldn't say that you're, here too early or too late or anything like that.
Well,
it's just that given, if this were a case where there were not adequate open space being provided, I think your argument might fall on friendlier ears. In this case, and it is common, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on which side of the equation you're on, that much common area in neighborhoods is encumbered by easements of one kind or another. But it's there, it's open, it has trees, flowers, and so on. The fact that you can't build, for instance, a swimming pool on it really doesn't enter into our equation about how much property they're setting aside, unless it's like completely unusable.
Okay.
From a legal perspective, since they did meet the subdivision, they've exceeded the requirements, are we even allowed to require even more beyond what the regulations say? Can we even do that?
You can do
Because
that.
it's seemingly
If you feel
arbitrary.
that there's a
It's arbitrary
necessity,
to me at that point.
that what's required by the subdivision regulations and what's in the plat is inadequate.
Yes. That's not the issue. I think the question is whether there is an appetite here for requiring the developer to do more than they have. That's where we are.
Can I ask, as far as the procedure of this process goes and moving from the preliminary plat to the final plat, if through further negotiations that aren't done in the 11th hour on the day of the meeting, we're able to reach some sort of agreement with regard to Lot 14, Lot 11, or some other common area, is that something that could be adjusted between now and the final plat?
Absolutely. That will not be any obstacle whatsoever.
And this may not be a question best suited for you all, but rather for the developer, but does anyone know at what point lots 14 or 11 would be available to be sold and developed? Would it have to be after the final plat was approved, or could it be after today's meeting and today's vote?
I think it would have to be after the final plat is approved, but you can speak to the developer about that.
Okay.
They might be willing to sell you dirt before it's platted. I don't know.
And I apologize if I have blindsided you all. This is something we've been in discussion with Caliber through Jared. We've discussed this with him for a matter of a couple of months now, but as tends to happen with everything, the ball doesn't get rolling until the last minute.
As I say, you're in the right place at the right time.
So a final plat would be phased, and so it would not look like this. It would be portions of this. Mr. Johnson thinks it at the earliest would be at least 9 months before we'd ever be in a position of coming forward with turning dirt. So the best thing to do is just keep in touch with Jared, and if you guys are able to come to an agreement, then provide whatever assurances he needs, and Tim can adjust the drawing fairly easily and move forward.
Okay, I appreciate everyone's time and consideration.
We appreciate you coming down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there's no more discussion, I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary plat for C-7133, subject to the deletion of TEs 4, 5, and 6.
Yes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the preliminary plat of the Grove Phase 14, eliminating TEs 4, 5, and 6. Would you cast your votes, please? It is approved.
Item 7 is the final plat of Montereau Phase 3, located south of Northwest 150th Street and west of North County Line Road.
Good afternoon. Kendall Dillon with Craft and Toll, representing the applicant. The third final plat of Monroe Edition, it's in conformance with preliminary plat, had 2 standard TEs. Not sure why it wasn't on the consent, but I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
I don't have anyone signed up to speak. Is there anyone here today who wishes to be heard on this item? Commissioners?
Any comments, anybody? It's mine, so. I'll make a motion to approve the application for C-7127.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 7. I note that the staff report indicates it's in conformance with the subdivision regulations and with both the zoning and the preliminary plat Cast your votes, please.
Thank you.
Item 8 is a preliminary plat of Northeast 26th Street and Walnut Avenue, located north of Northeast 23rd Street and east of North Santa Fe Avenue, and a variance to Section 5.4.3.E.2 of the subdivision regulations.
Before you launch, I have a question for the commissioners to keep in mind or discuss now, either way, and that is whether we should hear this item before the zoning is approved. I know that it is scheduled to be heard. I don't have the date right at the tip of my fingers for some reason. And so I had that question in my mind, February 4th. And so the question is whether we should make this decision before the zoning is approved.
Just because it came through us, but it's got to still go before council is the issue. It goes before council on the 4th.
Well, yes, it's been through us. But because it would change, I think, the way the property would be viewed. If the zoning's not approved, then I think we're in a different place.
If the zoning wasn't approved, then we would not come back with a final plat.
So.
Can I go?
Do we want to discuss this more?
I mean, I guess worst case scenario, we can make it a TE, could we not? I mean, just subject to approval. I mean, if it's just in the interest of advancing the item, it's a preliminary plat, we could certainly make a TE unless Dan shakes his head no, which he didn't. We could make it a TE. Let's just do that.
We'd be agreeable to that. Thank you.
Okay.
Mark just told me it already is a TE. So this is, you all saw this at our zoning case. So this is, we're leaving out the historic building and putting in small homes. They're not that small. They're 1,200, 1,700 square feet. And so in order to achieve that, we're coming in with this plat. And these lots here have rear-loaded, and these lots back here are also rear-loaded. So what you see is the units that will have garages have the alley that serves all the back of the houses, and then the units that will not have garages have parking provided inside the development here. We have an open space in the middle that'll be park-like, and the variance we're asking for is only in this area right here. Because we have 90-degree parking, it requires a 24-foot driving lane, but the whole alley is 20 feet all the way around, so we're asking for that small variance for that, to not have a bump out in the curb for somebody to hit. And yes, so we agree to all the TEs.
I do not see a TE that has anything to do with the zoning approval, but
I think maybe that was the intent of 3, that all the lots conform to the development regulations.
The proposed SPUD. Okay, I'm sorry.
On the final plat.
When did we hear this case? This seems like such an odd location for this use.
It is. It's actually it's a project that is working with the planning department as well as Positive Paseo and Jefferson District to construct these homes at low cost housing to be available in this area. And there's been a lot of activity talking about it. The Positive Paseo folks have received a lot of calls, questions about when these will be available. And they all qualify for the participation by the government for down payment assistance if you make under a certain amount of money. It's very similar to the project on 29th west of Classen. There were 6 homes built there.
Okay. I do not have anyone signed up to speak on this item. Commissioners, do we have any questions?
Just the question of whether TE3 does adequately address the concern of the fact that the zoning has yet to be approved by the city council, and the fact that we want this plat to be subject to whatever those, I guess, to be contingent on the approval of that underlying change in zoning.
Well, it doesn't quite say that, but
Yeah, okay.
You can add that.
Yeah, okay, well then, unless there's other comments, then I'm ready to make a couple of motions, it looks like.
do so, please.
First, I move approval of the variance to section 5.4.2.E.2 of the subdivision regulations for item 8.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to approve the variance, section 5.4.2.E.2. Cast your votes, please. It is approved.
I move approval of item 8 with the addition of, subject to all of the TEs, and with the addition of TE4 requiring that approval of this item be contingent upon the approval of the underlying zoning by the city council. Is that
We agree to that addition.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 8, subject to the existing 3 TEs and the addition of TE number 4, making approval contingent upon the approval of the zoning, SPUD 1175. Cast your votes, please.
Thank you.
Item number 9 is an application to close the south 10 feet of West Park Place right-of-way between North Classen Boulevard and Northwestern Avenue.
Again, Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates here on behalf of the applicant. This property you've seen a couple times. It's been the DDRC, it's been the Board of Adjustment. This is the 10th and Classen assisted, not assisted living, but it's going to be a elderly care and assisted living care that'll be, it's part of the Oklahoma Housing Authority's projects. A multi-story building with an interior courtyard. What we're here today on, we've got it rezoned, we've got everything we needed to do at the Board of Adjustment. We've been to the DDRC, which approved the vacation of this 10-foot of Park Place. We've confirmed that there are no utilities under that 10 feet. It does not take away from the maintenance ability of Park Place, because Park Place is a residential-sized street. It previously had 60 foot of right-of-way. We're asking it to be put to 50 feet, which is standard for a 26-foot street. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I had one question that I've posed to the municipal counselor's office, who's assured me that I shouldn't be worrying about this. But the idea of closing any kind of publicly held, in this case just an easement, and converting that, those are held in trust for the public, and the idea of converting that to a private use is a little bit, always just a little bit troubling to me. In this particular case, of course, it's not actually being used as street right-of-way, and the Oklahoma Housing Authority, I'm told, is not exactly a public use, but certainly is a health, safety, welfare kind of net benefit. So I'm told I shouldn't be worried about this.
No.
But
This is pretty typical. This happens all the time. The property owner owns the property subject to our easement, and when it goes to council, if the council think there's some reason to keep it, they can. Otherwise, it's pretty standard procedure to have these closed and vacated where they're no longer necessary or they're in excess of what's necessary.
Agreed.
okay. I do not have anyone signed up to speak on this. We did have one letter of protest. Is Linda Sands here by any chance? Her concern was that this would somehow prevent her use of Park Place, as I understand it, and I don't see how it would, so.
I
think she may have called and talked to one of the staff members. I'm not positive. It seems like Laura said that she had spoken to the lady.
Okay, commissioners?
Seeing as Commissioner Highsmith isn't here, if there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion. Make a motion to recommend approval of City Council on CE 1012.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 9. Would you cast your votes, please?
Thank you.
Item 10 is an application to operate a high-impact institutional use in the I-2 Moderate Industrial District located at 7900 Mid-America Boulevard.
Good afternoon. My name is Brian Moore. I'm with DBA Architects, 111 South Kentucky Street, Suite 210, Dallas, Texas, 75069. We're here representing the applicant, Everest Realty 3, Everest Rehabilitation Hospitals. And we've read the staff report. We have no issues with any of the comments from staff.
How come you're just now coming to get a special permit for the...
So before they bought the property, our attorneys reached out to the planning department and were given a letter saying that there were no additional requirements for the I-2 zoning for us to do a physical rehabilitation hospital. We presented our drawings, received a permit, and after we were well under construction is when someone at the city of Oklahoma City said, hey, wait a minute, you guys were supposed to have a special use permit. Once that happened, we filed for the permit. So it was, frankly, I think it was Oklahoma City's fault, but that's neither here nor there.
That won't stop us. I don't have anyone signed up to speak on this matter.
Yeah, I guess you're a little behind now that the rehab center just burnt down.
Yeah. So, yeah, 2 nights ago, our facility burned to the ground, but that's not going to stop us either. We're going to rebuild.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it was a pretty good fire. It went for all night. Is there anybody else here to speak on this? I'll move to approve special permit 542. Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve special permit 542, item number 10. Cast your votes, please. It is approved.
All right, thank you very much.
Item 11 is an application to rezone 9900 North Kelly Avenue from R1 to PUD 1693.
Madam Chairman, members of the Commission, Brian Kuhn with Hewitt Zollers representing the applicant. This is a corner you heard. A second.
Real quickly, sorry. I just want to make the point, I had recused myself from the earlier items dealing with the entirety of the tract when you did it. I don't feel like the issue that was presented in that item is presented here, so I feel very comfortable hearing the item. You have any objection to that?
Not at all.
Because
Not at all.
it's totally a different deal.
Not at all.
So, okay.
It's fine. Thank you for saying that. Again, as Commissioner Craven said, this used to be, the PUD you saw originally encompassed about 110 acres. Now it doesn't. It encompasses 16 acres on the hard corner. And I'll talk all you want me to on this, but it's got 3 TEs. We agree with all the TEs. So with that, I'd ask for your approval.
I do not have anyone signed up to speak on this. Is there anyone present who wishes to be heard on this item?
If there's no further comment, then I'm prepared to move approval of item number 11, subject to all of the TEs.
Second.
So apparently it was just the right amount.
It's just the perfect amount of this.
Well, there's that whole we won't go there.
The what issue?
There's that whole manure issue, but we won't go there.
We won't go there today. Thank you.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 11. Would you cast your votes, please? It is
Thank you.
approved.
Item 12 has been continued. Item 13 is an application to rezone 7300 North Classen Boulevard from PUD 1618 to PUD 1751.
Good afternoon. Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates here on behalf of the applicant. This PUD came before you all probably 3 years ago. And then we did a plat and a final plat, and a lot of the south end, all the grading's been done, all the utilities been done, all the parking has been built. And there's several buildings on the south end that are under construction. The purpose for us to be here, and I'll fall on the sword, is that we apparently negotiated ourselves out of all the right uses that should belong here on our PUD. And so when our client came to us and said, well, we want to do a dental office, we were like, yeah, it's always in there.
Oops.
Well, it wasn't in there. And so we are here before you to add back in uses that would be, we normally find in this mixed-use development, that'll allow the continuing development of both medical uses, retail uses. There's a brewery planned on Tract 8, and a little restaurant area in there, and this will allow those uses to be to apply. So this is the development plan that you all saw originally, and we have held to it. There's the man cave style storage buildings are under construction here. The ponds have been built. You can't see it very well on this drawing. So here's the railroad tracks, but there's the ponds. The parking lot's in. This is an office building. There's another office building under construction here. There are several houses that have been built in this block. There are people living in the houses already. So we're not changing anything that was already approved. We're just adding the uses to allow for the mixed-use development.
And so really specifically, the uses that are being added,
on page 3 of the PUD, under permitted commercial uses, to what's already permitted, we're adding about 13 uses, of which the animal sales and service, grooming, parking garages, parking lots, alcoholic beverage retail sales, child care centers, convenience sales, personal service, drinking establishments, sit-down alcohol permitted, food and beverage retail sales, lodging accommodations, home sharing, and medical services. And we do have the building that's under construction got a shell permit, but they won't be able to pull their second permit until this is approved by council. And that building's under construction.
and so within the framework of what you have already built and the way that is designated for development, where do you anticipate these uses would locate?
The additional uses? Well, there'll be...
Particularly the sort of the commercial and...
The commercial is going to be back in this part of the development, was always planned to be back there. This is planned for multifamily or live-over work. These are office tracks, and it'll be a mix of, not unlike other office, small office developments where you might have a dentist on one side and a lawyer on the other side. This is a 2-story accountant office being built. So we see those mixes being interplayed within the office complex. And the more of the retail food stuff is planned up here. And we back up to the railroad tracks. We're across from industrial zoning. There's a rock quarry on my south side.
So I'm really thinking about this in terms of like the fast food. We're not having drive-ins here, right?
That's correct. So we do the fast food is added to allow for, like if we have a coffee shop that you have a drive-through.
Okay. Commissioners, I do not have anyone signed up to speak. Is there anyone here who wishes to be heard on this item today?
There are no TEs.
Yeah, there are no TEs, so.
Yeah. Nobody else has anything to say. Great project, great developers. Been watching this since it started, and it's really turning out to be a neat deal. So I'm happily make a motion to approve PUD 1751.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 13. Would you cast your votes, please?
Thank you.
It is approved.
Item 14 is an application to rezone 8411 South Walker Avenue from O2 to SPUD 1187.
Madam Chairman, members of the Commission, again, Brian Kuhn with you, as always, representing the applicant. This property is down on South Walker. It's actually west of an existing office building that's been there for many years, all Ford Engineering. They're selling the property to our developer. Barbara Chisco is our executive director of Rose Home, and it's a home for single moms that are pregnant for a place to live. And they've been in business, been doing this for a long time, and lost their facility to a fire, and so now this is going to be their new building. So there are no TEs, which is even a better number than I said before. It was a good number. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions. We've been meeting with all four representatives a lot and worked out a lot of issues. We're going to build a sidewalk along the north side of there so the ladies can have a way to get out to Western safely without having to walk through parking lots. So again, be glad to answer your questions.
Commissioners, I do not have anyone signed up to speak on this. Is there anyone present who wishes to be heard on this item? Comments, questions?
No comments. With nothing else, great project. Going to enhance the street nicely. So I'll make a motion to approve SPUD 1187.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 14. Cast your votes, please.
Thank
It is
you.
approved.
Item 15 is an application to rezone 9817 Southwestern Avenue from O2 to SPUD 1188.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. This is a Spud application that seeks to maintain the O2 zoning and then add retail and convenience sales uses. The staff does point out that this is an area that is considered a retail corridor, so staff does recommend approval of that based upon that. There are 3 TEs. We agree to TE 2 and 3. I want to talk about TE 1. TE 1 is asking us to delete the concept of parking in the rear. We do want that. If you imagine this small office building, we think the additional parking is going to be needed and necessary. The stated reason is the ability to, I guess, reverse a car across a sidewalk. I do that at least once, if not multiple times a day, every time I leave my driveway. Anyone that lives in a house that is in a neighborhood that has a sidewalk accomplishes that very movement every single day. I'm not sure what the concern is. We understand that it is right away. We will have to go through Board of Adjustment to seek a variance, Traffic Commission. All of those steps we understand we're going to have to undertake, but we do think it is an important part of this project to have the parking in the rear. We have been in communication with the folks that own and live in those duplexes to the west. They also like this concept of having the parking on site rather than the potential of having all the cars within that neighborhood. So we'd ask for approval subject to TE 2 and 3 and delete TE 1.
I think staff has fairly strong feelings about this. Would somebody like to come up and speak to them?
Everyone's looking around. Who wants to?
Yeah, everybody's looking around. Sarah Welch, Planning Department. Right, we do feel, normally we do advocate for parking in the back of buildings. However, in this case, they're surrounded by streets with duplex development both to the north and to the west without really the ability to screen, and the placement of the sidewalk behind the parking stalls is not ideal. And I don't even think it's in conformance with Chapter 32, which is not our chapter, but to David's point, or Mr. Box's point about the backing up, you're right, on houses you do have that, but you have at least 50 feet of frontage and one driveway per 30 feet, or 50 feet. In this case, you'd have a really wide curb cut, and then you'd have cars backing up over sidewalks, and it's just not a design that we can advocate for.
So I will say, I actually have a driveway of my next door neighbor that is about 7 feet from my driveway. I think, frankly, the placement of the sidewalk that exists here is nonsense. It's in the back of a building. When you look at if you've driven it or looked at the Google Earth image, it's back of house. I'm not sure how many humans outside of the construction workers that poured the cement have ever traversed this sidewalk. I just do not see it as a safety issue.
I want to make sure I'm not wrong. Is there anybody, Madam Chair, that signed up to speak from the neighborhood to the west?
No, I don't have anyone signed up to speak.
Yeah, I believe that they want it. I believe they're not here because they want it, because they're going to park there. When they have guests or whatever, is the reality of the situation. I'm kind of in agreement as I look at the aerial on this thing. If there were houses on either side of this retail strip center where you're going to have people going, but this is, I'm not even sure why this sidewalk is here. It doesn't even make sense to me why the sidewalk would be here.
I don't know.
So because it's the back of this building, there's nothing else that even affronts. There's public streets on each side of this.
That's
98th
right.
and then whatever that drive is to the north that's not labeled.
That's
So-
right. And there's no sidewalks on Western. We're agreeing to do that through this, but why sidewalks got constructed in a location that humans aren't going to use it and not along Western?
And you're going to put sidewalks in along Western.
Yes, sir. That's TE number 2. Which
Yeah,
we
well, that's what I say, you're in agreement with the TE. So the other thing is, just practically speaking, too, the parking ratio here is very light, and as cars are driving down Western Avenue, especially northbound, going to make a left turn, if there's a bunch of cars that park, this allows the employees to park in the back that are going to be there, which lets open spaces appear in the front, which, is going to move traffic off the arterial. I'm like, I see a lot of traffic arguments as to why you would want it. I don't know. I don't see the concern. If this were, like I said, if this were along the front or something and there were houses on either side of it, I'd feel a lot differently. But I have to say, it seems pretty straightforward to me.
Am I correct that whether we require or delete TE number 1, you're still going to have to go to Traffic Commission?
Correct.
One way or the other?
Yes.
So it doesn't matter whether we do or don't require?
That's right. And I think we have to go to the Board of Adjustment maybe as well, because I think it's maneuvering and or parking within a piece of that is within the right-of-way. So Mr. Privet will get to hear it again.
So the difference may be only just your ability to go and tell those bodies that it's already been approved by the Planning Commission.
Yeah, but sure. But I think I'll have better arguments than just this fine group of people said yes.
Commissioners, other comments, questions? I do not have anyone signed up to speak on this. Nobody has indicated they wish to be heard.
I'm real familiar with this intersection and the one down the way. We did some sign work down there, and the multiple hours that we were there wasn't a single car, person, or anybody that turned in or even walked behind there. So from my perspective, the parking in the rear isn't an issue.
Sounded like a motion.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure how to word this. I'll move approval of Spud 1188, deleting TE1 with the knowledge you have to go through the Traffic Commission. And,
yes.
And then TE2 and 3 stand.
We agree to, correct.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 15, subject to TEs 2 and 3, deleting TE1. Cast your votes, please.
Thank you.
Item 16 is an application to rezone 13200 Northeast 50th Street from R1 to SPD 1190.
Hello, my name is Mary Mose, 13200 Northeast 50th Street, and I'm here to ask for your approval from a R1 to a Spud, where we want to place our business. We're going to live on this property. We're asking for your approval.
I do have someone signed up to speak on this item. Do we have any questions of our applicant before I call that? Robert, is it McCoy? Would you come forward, please?
Per podium there. Good afternoon, Robert McCoy, P.O. Box 1600, Choctaw. I actually own property. Well, before I begin, let me ask this. I want to verify, because I'm late to the game understanding what the purpose of this Spud was actually for. Did you get written materials from me? Okay. Okay. So I want to give you, so I own the property, I actually own two properties. I own 50 acres total in that area. They would be directly, that would be east of Mrs. Moset's property. I own two properties. One is approximately 40 acres. The other one is approximately 10 acres. And a little bit of history about this particular area, if you've never been over there. And I want to be careful with how I say this because I mean it in the most respectful way, but this side of town has been neglected. It has. It has no public water. It has no public sewer. It is probably one of the few areas in Oklahoma City that I'm aware of that don't. And what you're being asked to do is approve an application to allow for what is essentially a commercial or retail business in some sense to process or grow medical marijuana. You're being asked to approve a facility up to 10,000 square feet to do that. Now, if you've been out there, this cannot be hidden on an area of 5 acres. It cannot. You have no, because you have no water, you have no sewer, you have to clear that land. And if any of you have actually been out there, you'll see my attempt to clear my land, which was solely to remove the invasive cedar trees. My wife is still mad at me about this, even though I left every other tree I could possibly leave. And it just completely opens up the property. So now you have to clear for sewer lines, not sewer lines, a well, a septic, lateral lines. You maybe have another accessory structure there. You have landscaping requirements. That is not what this area is designed for. Okay? This area is R1. It remains R1. We don't have commercial businesses down this street. The street is in need of paving. And so just, and I don't want to take up too much of your time because I've already presented you some legal aspects and reasons why these spuds, what they're supposed to contribute to, the adverse effects they are not supposed to bring on you. But I will say this, I talked to Master Sergeant Huff of the Spring Lake Division, which is about 12 miles from here. There's no quick route to get there. It's all stop signs and probably stop lights nearer to the police division down there. He assured me that they cannot provide patrols out there, extra patrols. And so you're having this operation, which is essentially in the middle of nowhere. There are no witnesses. There's little traffic. Okay? So certainly from a safety and a welfare and a prosperity standpoint, those are all considerations that me and my neighbors have talked about. I don't know, I may be the only one here today. I actually found out the purpose of this operation by a visit to the city here last Friday. So I scrambled over the weekend to speak to the few people I do know out there. They are all opposed to it, but unfortunately, because of late notice, I don't know if anybody has had an opportunity to speak today. Certainly we will, I recognize that we will have another opportunity after this at the City Council, as will Ms. Mosé and her husband. I wish we were able to have a conversation about this. I can't say that we would have come to an agreement, but I hate starting relationships off in an adversarial way. But ultimately, I also spoke to Public Information Officer Mark Woodward with the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, and to kind of get a sense of security requirements, what would be required, what does this operation look like, and you know, he kind of told me some of the requirements in general terms, but there were other aspects of our conversation that were more interesting. He said, and I know this, and you all know this if you watch the news, that robberies of these facilities are becoming very common. Okay? I could probably turn on the news tonight and I'll find some reference to it. I can certainly Google it and find many references to it. You're talking about a facility, mind you, I'm using anecdotal evidence here, that probably has the capability of holding $2.7 million worth of crop. Not to mention that this is a cash operation. It is still federally illegal. Okay? I am actually a federal employee. I'm in a real spot here. It matters not my personal preference. Personally, I'm okay. with medical marijuana. Professionally, I cannot be. I can't even really be near it. My objection is to turning this piece of land from an R1 zone into what is essentially a commercial activity, okay? Because in the end, what you're going to have here is you're going to have a commercial activity hiding within an industrial-type structure, hiding within a Spud, which was always designed to be R1, okay? We can't change that. Okay. Okay. Then I have nothing further, and thank you for your time.
I think I have just a couple of questions based on the concerns that he brought. One, from reading the staff report, it sounds like what we're voting on is whether or not to approve agricultural processing. Now, forgive my ignorance of how much commercial activity are we talking about is going to occur on the property when we're with agricultural processing. I don't have that knowledge about what to anticipate. So as far as his concerns regarding traffic, regarding the security, regarding like what can neighbors anticipate, assuming we were to approve this as is?
To approve as is would mean that the size of the building is bigger than we'd ever anticipated at this point, point one. Point two, we don't enter into the industry lightly. The first consideration, of course, was to get into the business. The second consideration was securing whatever we did within the business. And to that end, we recruited a consultant, Precision Resources, that is our security firm, that provides us with security and consultation not only on how to protect our assets and how to protect our people, but also on how to navigate the legislative waters and also the legal environment. Our commitment as we're going to live on the property, number one, I have plans here for our home, and in terms of how the property is situated within the aspects of how the law is written, we would be very compliant in terms of having something that's 100 feet setback off the streets that's covered by trees. The best practices in terms of operating a growing operation. There isn't any retail involved. So there's no traffic in terms of constant people coming to look at what you're doing. In fact, it's a very secretive operation. I read the news as well. And as I said, you don't enter into the business lightly. The first consideration is getting in. The second is securing what you're doing. Within that, I seek the consultation of the police chief of Spencer. We're very close, and he's been to our facility, and he's done a job site walk to ensure that if we have a home there, we can be secure. If we have a grow operation there, we could be secure. I'm retired. I'm on site 24/7. We don't make a lot of noise. I've been out on that property as late as 10 o'clock at night, as early as 6 o'clock in the morning. You can't, it's very secluded.
You all don't have you all don't have any buildings there?
We have no buildings out there.
Yeah, there's no structures there right now.
For instance, out there right now, we've heard the argument that we're going to turn this into an industrial commercial operation, very private and solid.
Can we actually, if you don't mind, I did not mean to interrupt you. I think, JJ, could you clear up exactly for Commissioner Pennington also just what is allowed by 8150.1 and 8150.2 specifically per the code?
It allows growing of the crops on site and packing, sorting, sending them out for processing.
Yeah, that's it though. It deals with, it's crop related.
Yeah, it's an agricultural use. It's not
sales or offices or retail operations.
It's not a commercial use. It's an agricultural use.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to present this. This is the property to the east of
I'll circulate for you.
Our property, and I know that the gentleman's taking things to clear his property. That came to a commission
Yeah, so
all three of them that are watching at home want to hear what you're saying.
So to the west of us, there's this 10-acre lot that has junk cars on it. To the west of that was a former tree farm, so that was a commercial operation that went out of business. Our business will be completely indoors. The law says you must have cameras monitoring everything that goes on inside. So.
I'll just say,
Compliance. Compliance.
rob me, but I think that those issues with respect to security and so forth are being handled through the requirements of the state for these kinds of facilities. So as far as I'm concerned, and if anybody disagrees, speak up, I think our issue here is whether this is an appropriate location for this kind of agricultural use, plus the residential. You want to build a home out there. This property is zoned R1. I note, sort of by default, it was annexed into the city, and when property is annexed into the city, it's always R1. So it's not like anybody made that decision, sort of, specifically. It's not like somebody is, moving into my neighborhood, the R1 house next door, and they want to make it into a agricultural facility. So
We just had one of those last meeting, as it was. Yeah, just to be clear.
Anybody else have any comments, questions, concerns?
I would take what she said a step further, since we have seen so many of these, and say, when have we ever said, well, the security risk posed by the fact that you're going to store a bunch of wheat in a grain silo, somebody may want to steal it because it's $2 million worth, or a jewelry store, right, may get broken into. That's not a concern for us as planning commissioners, in my view, as it relates to use and density concerns. I think our staff report and the planning department in this instance point out a lot of great factors about this. Number one, it is zoned R1. It's not zoned commercially. It's going to allow for agricultural processing. A couple other things I'll point out, since it was commented by the protestant, is that the R1 base is going to limit your lot coverage. You know that. 50% of the master design statement limits building coverage to 15,000 square feet, which is 7% of the lot. So hardly any of it's actually going to get built on. And it also commits to only removing trees where construction will occur, which is something we ask people to do all the time, and they smile at us as if to say, no, thank you. Here it's being done on their own. So, to me, whether they're growing marijuana or weed or whatever else, it seems appropriate. I don't see what the issue is. If the guy wanted to build a barn, we'd approve it like that.
And you will recall last month when we were dealing with a similar request on Northeast 23rd Street, much closer into the city, closer to I-35, and it seemed like that was so close to a more urban area versus this, which is much more agricultural. I have knocked on doors in that area. It's far out there. So it seems more appropriate for this kind of use.
I think I'm ready for a motion.
I move approval of item 16.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 16. Cast your votes, please. It is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item 17 is an application to rezone 1145 and 1151 North Ellison from R3 to SPUD 1193.
Give us your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, Ryan Scalihorn, Creative Home Designs.
And what is it that you're asking us for today?
We're asking to change to R3, what's the word I'm looking for, parcel to a Spud.
In order to build 5
5 single-family.
single-family homes, and they're unattached.
That is correct.
I'm pretty familiar with this area. It is already zoned R3. It would already permit for some fairly intense residential development. Are you okay with the technical evaluation requiring the construction of sidewalks
Yes,
and the reconstruction of the one along, I guess, Ellison?
correct.
Okay. It is true, as noted in the staff report, that it's going to vary the street setback, but I don't think that that's problematic, particularly in this way. For one thing, there's not enough to compare it to for it to be much of an issue. There's to establish a line, I guess, is what I'm saying. I don't have anyone signed up to speak on this item. Is there anybody who wishes to be heard on item number 17? You're all aware that these kind of smaller, clustered, single-family structures are my preference for infill development, so no surprise there. There is a comment in the staff report that dumpsters, if needed, will be placed, blah, blah. You're not going to need dumpsters for this location, are you?
No, we would do the typical trash bins like any other residential.
Yeah, I think it's just boilerplate.
My only question, and it might be me being nitpicking, but I'm curious what everybody else thinks. Do we really need the signage?
Oh, that is an issue for me. We're not
Actually, we just discussed that, and we're willing to veto that.
Great.
So maybe a TE.
One other thing, how many stories will these be? 2?
3.
They're 3-story?
Yeah, but the maximum height will not exceed the requirement of 35 feet.
So could we say 3 stories or 35 feet?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, the 35-foot limit is a hard limit, so whether it's 2.5 or 2 or 3, it can't be more than 35, so.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I just yeah, okay.
Commissioners, I'll take a motion.
I move approval of item 17 with the addition of a technical evaluation to remove the signage.
Second.
Did you want to add something about your?
No, I'm good with it. I was looking at the, just so you know where my head was, it's just the R4 standard was none, but he does propose 35 feet of maximum height. I just wanted to make sure we didn't get a picture of 5 detached homes and then somebody comes back and builds a 5-story building with 70% lot coverage. I'm just, sorry. But yeah, no, I'm good.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 17, subject to the existing TE and adding a TE to remove the signage. Cast your votes, please. It is approved.
Thank you very much.
Item 18 is an application to rezone 7916 Southwestern Avenue from C3 to SPD 1191.
Ali Ganiabadi, 13001 Rohan Court, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. I am requesting the property currently is a daycare, which is R3, I believe, that they're using it for a daycare right there in front on the Western Avenue, to be rezoned for a C3, and then have a road to go to the land in the back, which is C1 right now it's zoned as C3, to be part of it to be I1 for a light industrial, like an office warehouse type of use.
Do you have an intended use for the I-1 property?
I'm sorry, ma'am?
Do you have an intended use for the I-1 property? Do you know what you're going to do with it?
It's going to be leased spaces to businesses that are that they need use for a little small warehouse and a small office, such as computer store, appliances store, those sort of use, very light industrial.
Have you seen the staff report? Have you seen the TEs, the technical evaluations?
Yes, ma'am.
And are you in agreement with those?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I do have someone signed up to speak. Do you have any questions of our applicant before I? Talitha Falconer. Right there.
I'm Talitha Falconer, 840 240 Place, Oklahoma City. I'm the HOA president and property manager of the condominiums on the north side, and all that I'm asking for is a permanent wall to be there instead of a stockade fence. And we actually already talked, and he agreed to that. So that's it. That's all I wanted. Because I knew the requirements were just a stockade fence, and we wanted something more permanent because this is where people are living, and we've had a big homeless problem. I mean, he knows all this already, but they'll bust down, they'll kick through the fence and cut through our community, and they're stealing stuff out of people's homes and stealing our mail out of our mailboxes, and I don't anticipate the homeless people still being there once he builds his, but we just want a permanent wall to kind of act as a sound buffer, and that way we don't see his, retail stuff going on, and they can have some sense of still having a quiet neighborhood that they've always had.
What do you mean by a permanent wall? What did you all discuss? I'm curious.
I just wanted like an 8-foot wall that was decorative in some way. Like I had mentioned to him a stone wall. I know those can be expensive, and I know that they make man-made stones, so it's a little cheaper. But he said he has another property in another area of town, and he has a cement wall that's fine. Just something permanent so that it's not able to be, you can't kick through it, and I don't have to come back to him in 20 years and say, okay, this wooden fence is crumbling apart, we're going to have to deal with this constantly with a fence that this way it's just done easier for everybody.
And is she correct that you're in agreement with the construction of a masonry wall?
It's not a masonry, it's a concrete precast that it is 8-foot panels, that is 8 foot tall, is a concrete and is permanent. And we done this at another property on Southwestern 119th and Southwestern that the neighborhood had concern regarding a wood fence panel that it was going to deteriorate and destroy it, so we put a permanent concrete precast. And it's decorative.
6 foot, 8 foot?
8 foot. It's decorative concrete precast. Mainly the homeless issue at this location, this land has been vacant for so long, and since it's been vacant and it's got access to the Western, the homeless people have put a tent, and they just use it as a, sleeping and gathering. And we, like she said, we've had a lot of problem, and this land just never been developed because of the fact that it had no access to Western. And by getting the daycare on Western and zoning as C3 and having access to the back, we're able to develop the back area and kind of clean up all of that land that it is back there and it's been vacant for so long. And the homeless people just gather there for so long, you know.
Is there fencing in place on the west side where the retail center is there? Is there a fence in place on the west side of your property?
Yeah, there was a fence there, and the homeless people were tearing it out, just like her fence being torn out because they wanted it to get back there and sleep. So we took that fence out, clean up all the trees, and mowed the land that is in the back of the shopping center. We cleaned it all out and put a security there and add more lighting back there. So it seems like it is helping, and I have not seen any, but today she showed me a video that they caught a homeless man in her neighborhood that was trying to start a fire.
Which is why I was late, because that was happening while I was on my way here, and they were, two homeless people were literally just standing at the end of one of our buildings, just starting a fire, just going to catch the building on fire. It's just insane what's going on over there. But and so our HOA has a long-term goal of getting an HOA loan and doing a permanent wall around our whole community and having gates at the front. But right now we're working on our buildings. We have leak problems and other stuff. So once we get our buildings fixed up in about 5-10 years, then we're going to get a loan to do the wall around the whole community. But this would help in the meantime against that, and he understands. And I actually didn't know. He owns the strip mall on the west side there, and I didn't know that was him. And so I knew him before because of the homeless stuff. We were communicating through email because there was a different owner of the land at that time. So when he came here, I was like, oh, it's you. I didn't know. So I could have talked to him without going this way, probably. But yes.
Can I ask staff, there's not a requirement that there be fencing or any kind of site-proof between the retail and the industrial. So it seems to me like you'll have your own motivation to deal with the security issues along the west side. It's really the north side that we're talking about here, where it abuts the condominiums.
So just to confirm, I mean, if I'm interpreting what we're discussing correctly, it would be an amendment to your master design statement 9.16, which would just say that the property boundary to your north shall be screened by an 8-foot concrete precast wall. Are you good with that language?
Yes, sir.
Or you could just add it as a TE.
Yeah, or that, but, I mean, I have one other issue I'd like for us to discuss just as a commission on this one that I hate that I didn't get a chance, and that's my fault beforehand to talk to staff about. But so you own the property to the north, the strip center to the north. There's a signalized intersection there.
Yes.
That serves this daycare center. Their issue with ingress and egress, my guess is probably going to be another one of those Scooter's coffee locations.
Yes.
And we've had a couple of these things come through where they're trying to fit these things in on, basically tiny envelopes, squeeze them in. You've got this signalized intersection. You've got this entrance to the north that it looks like you're willing to close, if I understand your application correctly. There's two entrances. You're going to close that one to the north. Yes. But you're going to then connect your two parcels together, and your southernmost entrance on that property is still going to really impact the ingress and egress relating to the intersection there.
Yes.
This area along I-240 and the amount of density in terms of businesses along that corridor, messing with that intersection is a real problem. I feel like this is a little bit outside of our purview since it's not within the rezoning application, but I'd like to discuss it with you and for us to discuss it because I feel like if you close that entrance, we could really eliminate a lot of issues with the interference on that signalized intersection and clean that up a lot. And I would certainly feel a lot better about it because what's going to happen, the way that your site plan is laid out, these people are going to come out of this Scooter's Coffee drive-through and they're going to be backed up back toward Western, and instead of being able to turn left and go back out at the signal, they're going to see that opening and take a right and then try and make another left turn out of your shopping center to come back through that intersection. And I don't like that. And I understand there's some comments in the staff report that reflects some of their concerns with it, and I feel like it's a legitimate issue. So I don't know if Commissioner Hinkle has comments on this since his ward knows what I'm talking about, but It's a problem. I mean, it's a problem.
Well, I'm open to suggestion. I think by closing one of the entrance from the, just having only one entrance, and that would be just in front of the signalized light, was the best idea to minimize too much in and out of the partial, because right now he's got two entrances.
Well, to put it a different way, and I understand this is outside of the total application, but you got 5 curb cuts there along Western, correct?
Right now 5, yes.
5 curb cuts. You're going to give up one on the daycare center, which helps on the south side of the intersection. There's another curb cut there on the north side of the intersection that's just north of it, that's served by the shopping center, but you've got 2 other entrances that are further north away from that signalized intersection that impedes traffic.
Yes.
Is that something that you would consider amending as well?
What do you mean by closing it?
Yeah.
The shopping center is really served a lot of tenants there. It's very, it's got about 30, 40 tenants. It would make it very difficult to close any of them because, they use every one of those. And by closing, one out of the daycare, I think that's the best it can be done for that property.
Well, you're also going to suck a lot of traffic from your shopping center down to the signal, right? People are going to be drawn to that signal, and I get what you're doing, and if I'm the owner of the shopping center, I'm doing the same thing. But I feel like we have a chance here to eliminate a real problem. So I'm way going beyond the balance of my time. I want to hear from other people, but that is my concern, and I wanted us to talk about it because I think it's an issue.
I'm open to discussion to see what your ideas are as far as, if whatever needs to be done. I think having 4, I've talked to the civil engineer, and
that curb cut is right, it is literally on the north side of, that traffic light is basically hanging over your drive, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, they did. I don't know why. It's just there.
Yeah, I know. It's just there. I know.
I have to admit it's just there, so there's nothing I can do about it.
Except?
I made my suggestion. I don't know if, you got, you use
I just want to be clear about what the suggestion is. You're suggesting that he close that curb cut.
I am.
Okay.
Which right now is outside of the subject area that we're talking about. But to me, this is a conditional part of where I am on this deal, because we're going to create more traffic with this coffee shop, and they're maybe I'm a little overly sensitive, because over in my neck of the woods, they just put one at Rockwell and 122nd in front of a convenience store where there are 2 curb cuts on either side of it that are within 50 feet of the intersection, and it's crazy. I'm not even sure how they got that done.
But honestly, right now, the light serves, it's been put to have for traffic to come to it. From the daycare, you can have, there's got a light just facing the daycare.
I know, which is going to be great for your industrial people that are in the back. Mm-hmm. But you're building a lot of space that's going to create a lot more traffic, right? Which is what's in our staff report, which is that the benefit we're gaining, right, we're sort of adding pressure to it too, and then you're going to have people coming out of this coffee shop, one after the other from the drive-through lane. They're not going to be able to get out of there, so they're going to turn right. It's going to happen. They're going to try to get out of that first entrance, and they're going to mess all that up because there's that, what you and I both call a soft intersection there, right? They put in that signal that's not at a hard corner. It's this off corner, and to try to, but that's a problem.
The scooters, we backed it up quite a bit to have enough.
How many cars can queue in that line?
About, I want to say about 10 to 15. We have backed it up quite a bit to have that far, and we can even back it up a little bit more to have more cars, if that's the concern of a queuing that you have. We can back it up, and that's one of the reasons that I cut the curve to have, in case there is more car in the queuing turn, to go into the shopping center and go north. And if there's a concern to you, we can back it up a little more and have maybe more than 15 cars back, in the queue.
I still don't think I can follow what the suggestion is. It's to eliminate the second, so starting from the south, it's to eliminate the second curb cut.
I'll point out, so what we're looking at on the screen there, on your sheet, I'm going to point out there's 2 curb cuts coming out of what is currently a daycare center. She's over one now, and then she's going to go north. There's the other one. And then she's going to go north. Right there where the cursor is, go back down, Cindy. Right there is the interchange. It's actually a part of the shopping center where you can make a left turn onto Western, and there's a light signal right in front of it. So that's the curb cut I'm talking about.
So there's 2 that are immediately adjacent to each other, and I agree. That's going to create an issue.
It's going to create
Well, right now there's
our traffic
3.
guy. Listen to that.
Right now there's 3.
There's 3. You're gonna reuse.
We're closing one of them.
Right. You're closing one, but the one immediately north, that's going to remain open, and I think that's what our concern is that there's still one there in close proximity to the intersection. That my feeling is that there needs to be two driveways closed. That southernmost one of the shopping center should be closed. The north one of the daycare, yep.
I must agree.
I realize I am an ardent defender of the existing curb cut. Ardent defender, okay? But we sort of got you here in the sense that we know, you've got all these tracks, and this is a legitimate opportunity to clean a lot of that up. If you didn't own that property, right, I wouldn't, but you do, and you've got a chance to fix it, and I think it serves all the people that are in that area and trying to traverse that, again, what we call a soft intersection there. It really improves it logistically, and it'll help the signalized intersection there. It's a way better end result. And again, a lot of my reason for being so sort of staunch about this is how much I-1 density, which I think is a great location for it, by the way, you're putting behind the building that's going to create that constant traffic from those flex parks in terms of trucks and other things that are going to really impact that intersection.
Yeah, it does. It does really clean it up. Can I ask for next meeting so I can discuss this with my civil engineer to redraw it?
Absolutely.
Yep.
You wanna
Move for a
continue 2 weeks?
continuance on Spud 1191 to the February 13th meeting. Is that February 13th, is that enough time? Well, I think the next one's the 27th.
27 would be better.
To the February 27th meeting.
And JJ, help me out here. I want to make sure I get this right. In the event that you're in agreement with our proposal, just so you're not caught off guard, he would have to renotice because we'd be changing the legal description for the subject property, right? We'd have to renotice?
No. I'm sorry, that's a staff question.
That was a staff question, sorry.
Yeah, in order to make it a hard requirement, we would have to increase the size of the site and provide new notice.
That's what I figured. Just so you know.
Say it one more time, JJ, I was not quite...
We'd have to amend your application to take in that driveway and then send new notice again, so we'd be like starting over.
Okay. On that note, I would agree, we'll take that one out. We will take that drive out, and we'll just leave 2 for the shopping center, and then the one that the signalized is that you agree.
Well, here, but I think we're
now that you've got him over this barrel.
I know. I think we're in a catch-22. So I think in order to do that, we'd have to make it a part of the subject application. In order to make it a part of the subject application, you're going to have to add it. Is the point? You're going to have to do this either way.
Okay.
But I'm more than fine. I think you should take your time to try to see if there's an alternative solution. But yeah, you got to come back either way because I can't get behind it like that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'll come back to the 27th.
Okay.
So we're going to continue to February 27th? I'll make a motion.
No, the February 20, did you say February 27th?
February 27th is the 2 meetings from now. The next one is
what
February 13th.
about the next meeting? Is that enough time, JJ?
13th.
So it's got to be February, okay, February 27th is,
Okay, now wait just a minute. If he decides tomorrow, yes, he's going to do this, he's still not going to make the February 27th meeting, is he, or can he?
Yeah, we can make that happen.
Okay, all right, February 27th.
Second. Thank you.
I have a motion and a second to continue item number 18 until February 27th. Please cast your votes. It's approved.
Item 19's been continued.
We are going to take let's take 10 minutes.
Okay, we'll go ahead and reconvene. It's the B teams here. Go ahead and call the next item.
All right, item 20 is an application to rezone 19,000 Terra Place from R1 Single Family to PUD 1736.
Tim, before you get started on this, I'll just say we were here a month ago, had a lot of conversation at that time, heard a lot about the case. I think unless there's disagreement from the commissioners, I think you can sort of start us out with where we've come from then instead of rehashing where we've been.
Absolutely.
You want to tell us where we are today?
Yes. For the record, Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates here on behalf of the applicant, Beautiful Restoration. And I would like, several of their members have shown up in support, and I would like them to stand just so you recognize who all is here in support. Thank you. And so there has been a lot of conversations, a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails back and forth over the last 30 days, and especially in the last couple of days. And we have reached what we think is a compromise with the neighborhoods, an equitable compromise. And so I've got 6 items. I'm just going to briefly run through them as the big things that were changed. But first of all, I'll start out with, as you recall, the original application was for the whole 17 acres. We've pulled this out. It'll remain R1, and our application, our new application is just for 3.5 acres up in the far northeast corner of the property. And the permitted uses that will now be allowed in that is the only permitted commercial uses is now a coffee shop that is an accessory to Beautiful Restoration, the ministry. The R4 for the tiny homes was changed to an R1 underlying district, and we limited the number of tiny homes from 25 where we had been before down to 20 where we are now. We agreed to do them in 2 phases, 10 in the first phase in the first 24 months, and the next 10 after that, and we've agreed to notify the neighborhood as a courtesy to let them know that we're going to be constructing the second phase. It's still the intent to build these tiny homes on foundations with meeting the same architectural requirements that we would for any other PUD that you see with 70% brick or masonry. That language is still in there. We've agreed to an advisory board to be created and managed by Beautiful Restoration. This board may include a resident from both Rushbrook and Stonebriar neighborhoods who will act as community liaison, who are also members of the ministry. This board will discuss the tiny home phasing, architecture, and plans as they progress and are managed. All specific plans will require a 300-foot public notice, which, if you'll recall, when we were here before, we agreed to a specific plan for the coffee house and the tiny homes, and that is a requirement of the fire marshal for the tiny homes. He wants to bring a plan back for circulation. And that would be notified to a 300-foot radius as it normally would. And as I mentioned, written notice shall be provided to the Stonebriar Association and to the Rushbrook Homeowners Association prior to the formal application of building permit for the first tiny home of the second phase. So with that, there's really not a lot to add. We've pared this down to, it's really focused on exactly what this ministry is doing and wants to continue doing. And so I'd be happy to answer any question or give the floor to Kelly.
Commissioners? Nothing yet? Anybody? So one just question I have. At our first meeting, we took the coffee shop out. We put it back.
You know, we were negotiating against ourselves on the first meeting.
And just for the record, I asked you why you took it out to begin with. Yeah.
And so it's really on the heart of the ministry. They really want to have that coffee shop as a place to meet, hook up with members of their group, have coffee, bring in a little bit of revenue to help the ministry out. And by us restricting it to as an accessory use to Beautiful Restoration, it fixes it as long as they're there. In other words, if they go away or sell the property, Starbucks cannot build a coffee shop.
And just for the purpose of the record, before I call up anybody else who wants to be heard, there was submitted to us today a revised master design statement for the PUD. That's what you intend to incorporate into the record for approval today. Is that correct?
Yes, the staff has it, and it includes these items plus some typos that were fixed.
Okay.
But that's the final document.
Okay. No other questions?
Is the coffee shop for residents only, or is it open to the public?
It'll be open to the public.
Other questions? Okay, thank you very much. I have a number of people that are signed up to speak. Kelly Work, you want to come forward first?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. My name is Kelly Work, and my address is 105 North Hudson, Suite 304, and I am representing a group of residents of both the Stonebriar neighborhood, which is the neighborhood to the north, across 192nd Street, and then also the Rushbrook neighborhood, which is the neighborhood on the south side of 192nd Street that is to the west and to the south. And they organized and actually set up a not-for-profit corporation to respond to this application. So that's the group that I am here representing today and have been representing through this process. They've made an effort to stay in communication with the residents of both of those neighborhoods to make them aware of the application changes that have taken place since the application was filed, and also about the negotiations that we've had with the applicant and the applicant's representatives. And so I do want to just confirm what Mr. Johnson has stated, that we are in agreement with the PUD as amended. Those amendments, a number of them have been made since your staff report was prepared on Friday, so there will be a number of changes that will not be reflected in your staff report, and that incorporate the points that Mr. Johnson mentioned in his remarks just now. That revised PUD document does reflect the revision date of January 22nd, 2020. It has that date on each of the pages, and that has been submitted to the staff today. So it is, able to be acted upon and receive your recommendation, assuming you all are comfortable with it. But all of the changes are ones that we're comfortable with. We feel that it's a reasonable compromise that we are able to agree to on behalf of these residents in the neighborhood that I represent. And I do want to thank the applicant for their willingness to work with us to try to reach a reasonable compromise. So we appreciate that. We appreciate their representatives, Johnson Associates, Tim Johnson and Mark Zitzel. We've had a lot of conversations and meetings with all concerned to get to this place. And also I want to express appreciation to Commissioner Pennington and to Councilwoman Nikki Nice, both of whom have been involved and also have participated in meetings. And I'll mention also Debbie Martin with the City Council staff has helped to facilitate that as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. We are satisfied with the end result that is what has been submitted with this revised PUD today, and with that, we don't have any further objection and are willing for it to be moved on with your recommendation to the City Council.
Yeah, just for clarification and to refresh recollection, you don't represent HOAs for these neighborhoods because the developer still technically maintains control of the HOAs, which is why you referenced that you set up this not-for-profit corporation. So is that correct?
That's correct with respect to Rushbrook. The Stonebriar HOA is actually controlled by the residents of Stonebriar.
But you don't represent the HOA for Stonebriar.
For their own reasons, they decided not to officially take a position with respect to this application. But there are certainly residents of Stonebriar that are organized and part of this group.
Got it. Questions for Mr. Work at this point? No? Thank you very much. I have a number of other people that are signed up to speak. If you've signed up to speak on behalf of the application, and I call your name and you want to be heard, please come up. I am going to reserve kind of the right to hold comments to 3 minutes just because we've heard all this before. So I want to make sure we get any points that you have, especially if Mr. Work does not represent you and you want to be heard, especially if you're in opposition. So with that, I'll begin to call the list. And as I said, I'm going to enforce the 3 minutes here. Jacob Hawkins, would you like to be heard on this?
See, I don't know how to do this.
Your name and your address.
My name is Jacob Hankins, and I'm at 2751 Cobalt Court, Northwest in Piedmont, Oklahoma 73078. My wife and I, 2 years ago, were struggling in our addiction. We're very broken, very lost. We've been sober 20 months now, and I contribute a lot of my sobriety today to Beautiful Restoration. A lot of my, I'm also an ex-Marine, so I've struggled with PTSD, mood disorder, stuff like that. And I can say that by God's grace today that I'm free from all that, you know. And I've developed a consistency with this ministry, you know, and I've found a family bigger than my my original family, you know. And I can tell you every time I come there, I get hugs and kisses from everybody I see, you know. And it's just it's growing, you know. And the rezoning is it's a blessing. It needs to happen because we need a place to put these people, you know. So we, I just for a long time. With a lack of confidence, I was a taker. And now that I have a confidence, only a confidence that God can give, I can finally be a giver. And I want to be a part of this ministry, and I want to give it back to the people that are broken in our communities. And I want to help people, you know, be in the spot that I'm in, and I can finally be that guy inside BR that can see those broken people coming through the doors and give them a hug and a kiss and say, hey, welcome home. And it's just a blessing. And I appreciate your time, and we need we need the small homes to help people. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your service to our country, and thanks for coming down today.
I appreciate you. Thank you, sir.
And by the way, if I call your name and for some reason you choose not to be heard, then just raise your hand and be accounted for. That's fine. Next person I have signed up to speak is Bobby Douglas. Seeing no Mr. Douglas. And by the way, if I mispronounce your name, don't hold that against me, okay? It is the B team here. So, next person I've signed up is Sakira Baez. Baez? Got it right the first time.
So my name is Sakira Baez. I live at 2009 Tanglewood Drive, Edmond, Oklahoma. I come before you today to speak on the behalf of women who need a place like Beautiful Restoration, a place that is safe, secure, and a healing environment for women in crisis. In 2007, I decided to change my life from drug addiction and homelessness to recovery and rehabilitation. I wasn't looking to be enabled, but empowered to claim a life of stability that I had not imagined was available to a woman like me with my kind of history. But I knew I had to do it, not only for myself, but the child I was carrying at the time. I had already completed drug rehab before I moved to Oklahoma. I moved to Oklahoma City in 2007. And during that time period, after I had, my husband and I both moved here, and due to circumstances beyond my control at that time, we had a time of crisis between the two of us. Shortly after my daughter was born, and I found myself looking into shelters. I was not being abused, and I was not using drugs, and so there really was no options available to me. The only option was to stay in that disagreeable situation with a man who at that time said he didn't want me and was obligated, and I felt obligated to stay or go into the city shelter, and I didn't want to do that to myself or my child. Thankfully, the situation resolved itself eventually, but it would have been nice to have a place like Beautiful Restoration that would have helped us, counsel us at that time through that crisis and that transition, so that my daughter and I wouldn't have to go into a homeless shelter, but we wouldn't have to stay in a situation where there was a lot of hostility. Beautiful Restoration would bridge the gap for women in crisis like I was at that time in my life. I didn't need a handout, I needed a hand up. I needed a community and a tribe to speak life over me and my child and my husband. People, women, who could believe that I was worthy of something better, that would come alongside me with resources, vision, and affirmations, training, and love to empower me. It is only by the grace of God that I have advanced in my life the way that I have. And now, with the community of Beautiful Restoration, I can't wait to see where I will go. They are bridging a gap in the community for women in transition that might not possess the same resolve and tenacity that I had to leave my past behind. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, I know I have the tribe, the community in Beautiful Restoration, not only to build a better future for my children, but also for the women and the children who might find themselves in the same crisis or transition. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming down today. Crystal Haynes. Okay. Thank you for coming, Ms. Haynes. Sue Settles, it looks like. Ms. Settles?
Hi, I'm Sue Settles. I live at 2800 Woodbury Road in Edmond, Oklahoma. I'm not here as an authorized person or speaker for Beautiful Restoration, but when I heard this zoning issue was coming to the forefront, I felt like I needed to stand with our leaders. I have been attending Beautiful Restoration since June of this past year. I'm a retired social worker. I started here in Oklahoma County in 1974, before some of you were born. And I started investigating child abuse and neglect. All through that process, we kept focusing on children, and we still do as a social work profession, unless we broaden our scope to families. I know we hear so much about the restoration of women, and now we've heard from the restoration of men. What we are creating is the possibility to grow and to have families groom in a way that is so positive to them. I can't tell you how many times I left the courtroom over here with a judge ordering a woman who had just lost everything. We'd taken her children, she had no livelihood. We basically cast her straight out into the streets. We didn't give her much support for her addiction. You know, okay, you go get yourself clean, you find a safe and stable home, you get employment, and then we'll talk to you about visiting your children and possibly getting them back. I go to Beautiful Restoration not just for myself, because believe me, if you want an uplifting or a spiritual place to be, it's the place to be there. But I see story, and I keep hearing women saying over and over again how the program has stood with them through the transitions that they have been making, and it's been there for them. And I think as a community, Oklahoma City really needs to think about not just the dwellings or the structures or the easements or the egress or all of those other kinds of words. We need to think, are we helping families grow and build in Oklahoma City? And I think this is an opportunity to allow a program like this to operate. And I would have been proud to have, I just retired from the federal government in Washington, D.C. It's a kind of innovative program that I would have been proud to put our federal dollars towards. And so I'm looking at the future as to how can we build more programs like this, not how do we stop the progress of a program that has developed here at the grassroots level in Oklahoma City.
Thank you very much for coming down, Ms. Settles. Last person I have signed up to speak is Gayleen Stupik. Did I get that close? It's close. I gave it a B effort.
My husband is Slavic, so it's pronounced Stupich.
Got it.
So my name is Gayleen Stupich. I live at 13608 Thompson Road in Edmond, Oklahoma, which is actually Oklahoma City Ward 7. It just happens to be like this over here instead of up here. I came to Beautiful Restoration a year ago, primarily because I do ministry inside Mabel Bassett. We have a lot of women coming out of Mabel Bassett, and so I've made connections with a lot of the halfway homes, if you will, or transitional homes. Some of them work well, and some of them not so well. Part of the reason I came to Beautiful Restoration is because I thought this is a way that maybe with what they were doing, that perhaps instead of going to prison in the first place, we can help them and keep them from going to prison. And that's what I've seen happen. What I didn't realize is that when I started here, probably in March of last year, how broken I was. At 30 years old, I had walked away from a beautiful career to be a freelancer, and a few months later, I found myself pregnant, owning a home I couldn't afford, and definitely couldn't afford it when my son was born. Through a miracle, I was able to turn that around, but not without physically selling my house and moving everything back to be surrounded by family. Fast forward 25 years, I have a beautiful grown son. I have two sons. I'm married to the love of my life. We've been married 23 years, and we've been transplanted a lot. I don't have any family in Oklahoma. I've had major abdominal surgery, major leg surgery. I have nobody to come around me. I'm not poor. I'm not broken. I'm not drug addicted. But one of the things that I think is an absolute miracle is how this body of people who love Christ love each other. This is the picture of what our churches should be, but our churches don't have the staff to do what we do. We do this out of love for free. We had a sister have a heart attack Saturday morning. We were connected through social media, and before her procedure, we already had people there. Her husband's a pastor down in Norman. We had so many people there, he was blown away. We don't do this as a part of the church anymore. We expect our pastors to do this and the staff. But we are the hands and feet of Christ, and I am so grateful that I have a place where I can serve and pour out my love. It is not the place for a halfway house as a transition type of home. That's not really what we're doing. We're helping individuals who've made the decision they want to live differently, walk a new kind of life, because a Bible study isn't going to fix them. But what does help them is at 2 o'clock in the morning when they're struggling with a decision or a heartbreak, sometimes they need somebody that they can count on to call and to walk through with them. And that's really what we do. And it's an honor to be able to be serving this way. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. That's the last person that I have signed up to speak. Before I ask if anybody else wants to be heard, I just want to thank everybody for adhering to that 3 minutes. I'll just say, as you guys come forward and tell us these stories, understand, as boring as easements and zoning codes and things like that are and may seem, for us they're the objective standards by which we measure an application. In no way was our comments last time at our meeting, I'll speak for myself and frankly for anybody who's up here on this one, directed at Beautiful Restoration in a negative way, the same way that any vote today isn't a reflection of our support or not for Beautiful Restoration. It's simply a matter of whether this application within our ordinances fits that use and density. There were some concerns. I think it's pretty clear that the applicant has given as good a faith effort as I've ever seen in 2 years of doing this to try to appease the neighbors, come up with a workable solution so the application can come forward. It's a shame we had to visit about it for an hour and 45 minutes last time before we came to the decision we needed to do that. But I think it's pretty evident that that helped us out quite a bit here. Is there anyone that is in opposition to this application at this point that we have not heard from that's here on their own free will and wants to be heard on the matter? At this point, I'm going to ask the commissioners if there's any information they think they need or if they're comfortable so we can have our discussion. Are you guys okay? Everybody feel good? Okay, so you want to lead us off here?
Sure. I just want to say thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing your stories. I read the letters. I was moved. It's very compelling, that the work that you all are doing, and so thank you for what you're doing for our community. I want to say a very special thank you to Tim and Kelly for bringing the two sides together, a compromise that I did not think was possible. They need you in Washington, let me tell you, because you all pulled off a miracle that I didn't think we would get here. So I'm very grateful for everyone coming to the table for the greater good, and so it's an example of what good government can do. So if there aren't any further comments, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move approval of item 20 as amended.
Can I make a...
Wait a second, JJ's got something.
When everything was going so well, staff has to object to one of the proposed amendments, and that's to provide written notice, mailed notice to the specific plans. As you know, the ordinance doesn't require that. We don't have a process in place for that. We don't have a fee for that. It really should be handled by a private agreement similar to the phasing of the tiny homes.
Yeah, I wrote that down, and I'll just say I agree 100% with that. Here's the problem. If we create, even if we tried to create the ability to have an arbitrary notice provision, everybody's going to come in here and want one, and we can't do that. There are statutes on point here for a reason that are provided by the state, and I think adhering to those is exactly what we should do. I wrote that down when Tim was talking, but with that friendly amendment, I'm assuming which you're in agreement to.
Absolutely.
Okay, so feel free to make your motion.
Could I offer just one suggestion with regard to that point, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
One of the items that we have agreed to and is referenced in the PUD document, and Mr. Johnson made reference to it, is that the applicant or owner has agreed that they will provide notice to the two HOAs, to Stonebriar Homeowners Association and to Rushbrook Homeowners Association, when they are ready to apply for a building permit for the first tiny home of the second phase. So we've included that language. So what I would suggest is with respect to the specific plan, that, and I expect they would be in agreement, I'll let Mr. Johnson respond to that, to just include that language, that the applicant or owner will notify the two neighborhood associations, Stonebriar and Rushbrook, of their intent to make application for their specific plan approval. That removes any obligation on the city's part.
Are we putting
to do
this in,
so.
are you asking this be included in the MDS? The master design statement? I mean, within
yes,
the DD? See, that's where you're going to lose me. Because we start doing that, we're going to have all these, I mean, here's what I'd say. Mr. Johnson and his group are here every single meeting presenting cases. If this is an agreement that's been made between you guys privately, that's one thing. Burying it in a PUD is something that I can't support it. I mean, I'm with him. I'm ready to move the application because I'm ready to make a motion. I'm ready to vote on approval of it from my position, but I hadn't had a chance to make that comment. I cannot get behind a notice requirement for this on the specific plan because it's not required. And so then putting something in a PUD, we're going to have people coming in here wanting to put all kinds of notice requirements. It's burdensome on the city. It's almost impossible to enforce. I don't like the way that feels. I can't support that.
Well, I think I understand your concern, and what I was trying to do is address what I heard Mr. Chambliss state, which is the city does not have a process in place to put them in the position of being required to make that notice. But if this owner is willing to agree to provide that notice and leave it not something that the city would be required to do, then we would just ask that you allow that commitment that the owner is willing to make to be included.
This is like a wild deed in a chain of title, though. I'm talking lawyer to lawyer here. That's a wild deed. I don't like the way that feels. It feels very cumbersome. They sell the property. The zoning follows it. There's a notice buried in there. That's how apartment complexes go up under construction at 178th and May with a one-lot plat they forgot to go get, right? And then there's a room full of angry people here over it. I don't like the way that feels. I can't speak for the commissioners. We understand your point, and I appreciate it. If any commissioners have a different opinion or want to express themselves on the matter, please do so. Otherwise, my opinion is I think we should exclude it. You're going to make your motion, so I'll let you decide.
If the notice isn't required for the future approval processes to start, does that change your mind? If all it's saying is, this is a requirement for the owner, on the owner, and it's just up to the neighborhood to enforce it, does that really change anything, or are you just afraid even of that?
Well, they should just enforce it and not put it in the PUD. I mean, they should just have a gentleman's agreement, and that's, because we have no way of enforcing if something changes.
So could we, between now, assuming this was approved without that provision, would that 6 weeks give you the time to then just create some sort of just contract between the two of you, agreement between the two of you in writing to that effect? Would that be sufficient?
I suppose that's possible. We can't speak for the applicant or what their attitude is. They were willing to make this commitment and to include this language in the design statement, and we discussed the fact that the city, because the staff, because there's no procedure in place for the city to require a city-mailed notice, we're not asking for that. We're not asking the city to provide a notice of the specific plan, but they were willing to include that language in the design statement, that they, as the owner, would give us that notice. Otherwise, you have a situation where what is the point of having the specific plan review if the surrounding property owners don't have an opportunity to have some input?
Yeah, we've had that debate here before. We've had that debate on a couple of occasions.
I understand.
And at least my opinion on the matter is that the specific plan is really a formality, because what it does is it ensures that whatever building permit is submitted is going to comply with the requirements of the PUD, which is exactly what the specific plan applications say. It either conforms or it doesn't. If it doesn't, they have to come talk to us because we're going to have a problem. But ironically, what's really funny is we couldn't even deal with it then. We'd have to amend the PUD, right? So your question's as good as mine. I don't know why we have them, but we had a room full of people who were up in arms because a permit got issued on an apartment complex at 178th and May, or 178th and Penn, up in arms. And city staff looked at it, right? And this is not a knock at city staff at all, but they're looking at these gigantic master design statements for zoning compliance. They see that it's R4. There's R4 in the deal. Let's issue it. Permit gets issued. Then there's a problem, they shut it down. That is not a good outcome. From a management perspective, that's not a good outcome for the city, and it's not a good outcome for applicants to have that kind of onerous responsibility put on them. They had to provide notice of the rezoning. If they were going to have a plat, they'd have to provide notice for that. That's all statutory. It's got nothing to do with us in terms of our ability to amend it. I think we need to hold that up, because if we let that line fail, you're going to have everybody in here wanting to put something else in their PUD that later on becomes an issue for us to try to field our way through with rooms full of angry people. That's my opinion.
Well, Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, when you are negotiating these terms of these PUDs, you're putting particular tailor-written provisions in each and every PUD that requires somebody on the 8th floor and the 9th floor of 420 West Main to review that document to make sure those requirements are met. So, that's no different. If you put in a requirement that says, well, a sign can't be more than 25 feet high and 200 square feet in diameter, somebody's got to make that review before that permit gets issued. So
I get all that. We understand it. I think we're ready to have our process. I understand what you're saying.
Thank you.
But that's my opinion. I'm open to whatever everybody thinks, but it's your motion you were making.
Tim, could you commit in writing to this commitment that was in the compromise between you and?
Yes, the applicant is willing to put that in writing and send it to them. And for the record, on behalf of the applicant, we will notify them when we submit our specific plan.
And then knowing, Kelly, that this is all still subject to the city council's approval. Is that sufficient? I guess what I'm saying is you'll have time to get this agreement in place before that vote.
Well, we're certainly willing to work with them to reach an agreement to make sure that gets implemented, yes. And I appreciate Mr. Johnson's willingness to do that, certainly.
Then I would like to make a motion to approve item 20, removing the notice requirement. Is that, I guess, the notice requirement for a specific plan for the second phase of the tiny homes. Is that sufficient wording, JJ, Jeff?
Is it just for the second phase?
The notice for all specific plans be...
Notice for, okay, so we want to, we're making a motion to approve item 20, removing all of the notice requirements for the specific plan. Yep.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to recommend approval to City Council on PUD 1736, subject to the master design statement that was submitted by Tim Johnson today, and with the removal from the master design statement of the requirement to provide notice for specific plans. Cast your votes. And the application is approved.
Thank you all for your patience.
Me
on this
voting for
case.
Ms. Powerseat.
Move it, move it. Dad, he drew on my doodle.
Okay.
Item 21 has been continued. Item 22 is an application to rezone 1111 Northwest 36th Street from R1 to SPUD 1171.
Madam Chairman, members of Commission, Brian Kuhn, the Hewitt Dollars. After that, all I'm asking for is a parking lot. Seems pretty trivial after all what you just got to hear. So great what we got to hear, though. I appreciate that. This is our third time to be here. We've continued this several times. There were several issues. We've had lots of meetings. But today, right before the meeting, we've made another decision based on the chairman's comments and some others that we're going to leave the house in the front of this lot. All we're really zoning today is the house lot. The Cock of the Walk building is already in place. There's a vacant lot behind it. And I might just show you this real quick. North is up on this map. Western's here. 36 is here. Here's the building. Cock of the Walk's right about here. We originally tried, we have this lot now is just a vacant lot. It's not part of today's discussion, but we've got a plan that brings it all into unified, kind of a unified development, trying to do the whole thing at once. We tried to get a driveway out the north side. There's not room. There's only 10 feet with gas meters and all sorts of things. We figured people were going to be hitting the building all the time if they try to do that. So we came down here. We had a driveway in and a driveway out. And then we're going to redo the sidewalks and the parking in the front on the western side and on the 36th side, clean all that up. There's been a dumpster on the side of that building for a long time. This will get rid of that. It puts the dumpster back in the back. But the comments that we learned about today was that this house, the chairman would really like to see that stay in place. So we've talked to the owners about it, developers, and they've decided we'll leave it in place. So that takes us back to one driveway. You'll go around, you'll be able to come back in here and park and then come back out. One of Mr. Highsmith's comments was he wanted only one driveway, So that accomplishes that today. But really, all we're talking about today is this lot right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to amend the application. I'm going to make the application smaller today, which you can always do, and I'm going to eliminate this portion of this lot from here forward to the south so we can leave the house. They really wanted to, their comment was, we don't want to tear down a house to build a parking lot. So
What's going to happen with the house? What's the condition of the house?
It's leased now. It's a full...
Leased as a residential house?
Yes.
So somebody's going to stay in a residential house surrounded by a parking lot?
We assume so. I know.
We're going to have to talk about this, because, this seems silly to me. I'm going to be honest with you. This seems silly to me. I'm going to give my perspective as a commissioner. We have a major parking issue on Western. The owner of this property is who wants the parking lot, correct? So we're essentially joining these parcels together.
Yes.
We've got parking spaces now that operate in the public right-of-way with angled parking spaces, which are a problem. Drive Western. We have the opportunity here to take a property that is immediately adjacent to this and require a landscape buffer to the west and to the north. Is the property that's west of this an office or a house?
House.
It's actually used as a house still?
Yes.
Because a number of these are actually offices.
Yes.
Yeah. So we can buffer that, and we can fix a parking problem, take traffic over to 36th away from Western, which seems like a win to me, and create more adequate parking for the retail. I don't understand why we would want to require them. The house is going to wind up empty, and then they're going to turn it into an office. So if you were trying to keep it from going commercial, you just made it commercial, is what you did. That's my opinion on it. I'm interested to hear other people's perspective, because I'm totally on the opposite end of what this house is.
So I disagree strongly with that statement. There is no way, and I was able to communicate with Councilman Cooper this morning about this issue, so he is in agreement that we're not going to vote to tear down a viable residential structure to create parking. I'm very aware of the issues along Western. I am not tied to the idea of there being some kind of unified master design statement, although I'd love that. Pull it all into one PUD and do all of that. I understand that they don't have their access to the north. I get all of that, and I want them to be able to do as much as they can do with the property that they have and they own, less than accept tear down a viable residential structure to create a parking lot. That is just not a precedent that I'm willing to start, and it's not something that we have done, and I'm not going to start doing it now. So that's not going to get my vote. The applicant has volunteered to reduce his property ask here in order to get this approved today, and I think that's what we ought to do. Just saying.
I still don't think I understand what this is going to look like when it's done.
Okay.
And I'm wondering if we can hear from staff, are they sufficient? I mean, denial was recommended. How are they feeling? That's my two questions. So.
Okay. This is the existing building.
That's right there. Yeah.
This existing building.
Okay.
This is a vacant lot now.
And then that driveway just west of that.
This is the lot we're talking about today. This is all the Spud is covering, is this lot right here.
Gotcha.
And there's a house on the front. There's some outbuildings in the back, which are just totally, they're unusable. They're falling apart. So we're going to tear those down. We were going to tear the house down and build a parking lot. So
now the parking is just going to go all the way around.
It'll be here. You can go around here and park.
So it'll be in the back of somebody's house. It'll be the parking for Cock of the Walk?
And this lot here. This will be parking also for Cock of the Walk. We're trying to get as much parking as we can. At night, I don't know if you've ever been to Cock of the Walk. I'm sad to say I was there a lot long ago, and I would walk across the street when I parked over here, which is not very safe. And you'd park over here in this auto lot. You'd park wherever you could. And this will provide parking. There's more than just the Cock of the Walk. Cock of the Walk is a very small part of that building. There's a sandwich shop. There's a record shop. There's about 5 different tenants in that building. So I hate to call it
a noodle restaurant.
Noodle restaurant. So they're wanting to. Western Avenue is just, I think, has been tremendous what's going on there.
Yeah.
And this, I think, will help that. At the time that we did this, we did the streetscape from Western to 63rd years ago. this was not, they weren't ready to do what they wanted to do. We've created the places like in front of VZDs, in front of Will's, where you can have outdoor tables. We want that to happen here. We want this to be nice now, because it's the gateway to that part of town. That's 2 miles. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get better parking here, clean this up. And so these, will this be patrons of this? Maybe, maybe not some. There'll be a sidewalk around the back of the building. It'll be people that work here. Right now there's probably 2 or 3 cars parked there at night, maybe from people that work there, because we own these lots. And yes, I understand exactly where you're coming from. This is what we'd like to see. However, we want to move forward with this whatever we can. We could do this right now, this parking right. We've already applied for the permit, and one of the staff's comments, I don't want to speak for them, but one of their comments, they want a unified development. Well, folks, here it is. From Western over here, this is our development. We've already applied for a permit to do this. So we want it to be, what you're going to see on the ground is going to be unified. It may not be in a document. To me, that doesn't matter. It's what the public's going to see, and it's going to be seeing a really cleaned-up building. So,
what's the difference in the number of parking spaces that we're talking about if you leave the house versus if you remove the house?
We're going to lose about 10 spaces, and right now we have 30 planned, so we're going to lose a third of them.
So, okay, so really, this decision, besides the philosophical issue of whether we tear down viable homes, we're really talking about 10 parking spaces.
Well, and I think the comment about a viable home is also important, too. Whether it's viable, I mean, it's a house, it's leased now. Is it a year away from needing major work on the floor? We don't know. I don't know. So how viable it is now, I don't know. And when I drive up and down the street, you're exactly right. A lot of those are offices on the south side. A lot of those are CPA's office, professional offices. So, and I understand it's a home. It's somebody's home. And I always try to remember that when I do zoning. It is a home, whether it's leased or not, it doesn't matter. It's a home. But it's built 60, 70 years ago. It needs some major work. And, after this current tenant moves out, they may not want to fix what needs to be fixed. Because it doesn't create a lot of income, I'm sure. So, it could be falling down in the next 6 months or year. The roof could cave. I don't know. But this is, again, Mr. Cravens, this is what we're wanting. And yes, we volunteered, but we'd like to move forward as much as we can. And if we're going to only get half of what we're asking for, then we would like to move forward to that because we need the parking. We want to fix that. We want to fix up this center. I call it the center. So, I'd love it if he convinces everybody. That's awesome. But I do know how city council works too. If the councilman says,
The chair indicated where the city council person stands on the issue. So,
yes.
As you know, we're going to make a recommendation.
So I'll shut up.
I have a question. Is there, I guess what bothers me about this and with the home staying, I think that's okay, but the layout of the parking lot, you've got 2 single loaded, so you're chewing up the majority of your space with circulation. The most efficient layout is 1 drive lane with parking on either side. Is there an opportunity to reconfigure that so that you've got double loaded parking spaces? Then the stuff on the west lot, you've got head-in parking. And there's at least a little bit of green space behind that home because I do have an issue with that home being surrounded completely by parking lots.
We tried that originally. This is probably Plan D or E.
Add on to that.
At one time we had a single driveway. Sorry.
Can I add on to that? The question was asked, and my staff comments are related to this, so you can probably fold this into your response.
Okay.
Because most of our concerns in the staff report relating to plan conformance were related to that 36th Street, the walkability, the sidewalks, and it sounds like you may have addressed some of that. I know we also were concerned about the alley, and it sounds like that may not be feasible. But kind of going along with what Commissioner Clare said, if we were able to do something there and make it a single loaded, that would enhance the pedestrian experience. And if you could talk a little bit more about what you propose to do. You mentioned that you were going to do something on the existing site right on Western, south of the existing building. What's going to happen there with the pedestrian accessibility?
Well, we're going to redo all the sidewalks around the building. This grade right now and why this is so weird, when we did this streetscape, our goal was to get ADA access from 36th to 63rd. So right now, there's a path from, if you stand in the middle of this intersection, you go to this side of the intersection, you can go all the way to 63rd on an ADA path, which I think is great. This doesn't work well because this building's about 4 feet higher than this. So to get an ADA workable sidewalk out into the right-of-way won't work, but we can get them to this sidewalk and get them over to here and then into the parking lot. Now, we tried I don't know if that answered your question much, but we tried a single driveway in the middle here, but we felt like instead of having cars parked that way facing that home, the next home that's not ours, so we went back to this. Now, we have agreed, Mr. A. Smith had some ideas of let's go to one driveway, which I think would solve some of what your concerns are of we were talking about doing one driveway with a wall, like a 3-foot pony wall, just, about this tall. So when you're on 36, because this is probably 2 to 3 feet higher than 36, so when you're on 36 and you just looked out your car window, you'd see a decorative wall, a brick wall or something, maybe 3 foot high with stone cap or something, instead of just seeing cars. So we want to enhance that view there, but if we keep the house, then all of a sudden our entire, these lots are only 42 feet wide. So all of a sudden, if we keep the house, all we have left right here is 42 feet, of which 30 feet is going to be a driveway. So the wall is not going to help anything here. Does that make sense? If we keep the house. Well, because by the time you have the throat of the driveway and it widens out at the street, it's going to be about 30 feet wide. Now, the drive lane is 24 feet, yes.
Right.
But by the time you do the curb, do the radius and all that, it gets up to about 30. So all of a sudden, we have 10 foot, 12 foot, where we could do a small wall, but you'd have a very small section of a wall, and then the house. So we could still do that, but the walkability on 36, we were going to build sidewalks here. So everywhere we could, we were going to build sidewalks. So I don't know if I addressed what you were talking about well, or...
So will a pedestrian be able to walk on a complete sidewalk from the western portion of your property all the way to western? I guess is what we were trying to get at with our comments.
You'll have sidewalks here, and you'll be into the parking lot, and then you'll have some more sidewalks here, and it dead ends at this property.
Okay, because I know there's a wall there, so is that going to be a complete sidewalk?
Here?
Yeah.
You'll be able to step into the parking lot that's here.
So it won't be ADA accessible?
Probably not. But you'd be able to come out in here and get down this way.
Could the sidewalk go around there?
Yeah. So you'd be able to walk that way. It's just not from this sidewalk. Again, this grade is such that you just can't get. As you can see, all these areas that are these are where we're going to be building ramps and to make it ADA compliant, because it's not now.
So here's the thing. I mean, the first time we talked about this, those many years ago, what I was told was that your client wanted to keep the house, and so that was always the way I looked at this. If there were going to be, this is your driveway problem, Scott. The issue with respect to what you're going to do to dress up the center, what you're going to do on the vacant lot directly west of it, we have no control over that. It's not before us today. We've got one thing in front of us today, and it is a single lot on which is sitting a viable residential property, and some space behind it that's filled with, I grant you, some pretty disreputable outbuildings. If the idea was, staff would like to see a unified development, they'd like to have you put it all into a PUD, then you could do some things trading off and making negotiations that maybe made sense with respect to things that you could do to alleviate other concerns, a huge buffer, and, that kind of thing. Maybe, although I don't know. This is always going to be a pretty tight space, and that's all there is to it.
Right.
So, I have always approached this with the idea that I would like to see you be able to do something with your property, this piece of property, that would enhance what you're trying to achieve. I was willing to let go of the idea of one big PUD. I was willing to let go of the idea of you're taking access to the property from the north because of the issues that are there, just the realities of the situation. This corner is always going to be a difficult corner, like so many other little commercial properties all over Ward 2 and Ward 7 and Ward 6. It's tight and it's wedged in there. I am all in favor of working out something to get you a little bit more flexibility and space to work with. But, this is where I dig in. I am not willing to see that house torn down to see that accomplished.
Okay.
And issues with respect to walls and where they get built, if it's not on this property, we don't have any control over that. Sidewalks and where they go, if it's not on this property, we don't have any control over that. So, and I'm not doubting your words or your clients.
I understand. And my point in the whole thing was that's why I did this, to show you that this is what we really want to do. And so you are getting this by giving us this. You are getting this. So.
But it's the issue with respect to your driveway. Unless we stop, step back, renotice, redesign, pull the whole thing into a big PUD where we can really control it and move all the moving pieces, what we're looking at is one lot with a house on it.
And that's about half of it, so.
So.
And we may be, if the house falls down a year from now, we may be back and say, okay, there's not a viable house there. I don't know. But we'd like to move forward if we can today, with get as much parking as we can. And plan ahead. Plan ahead. So I understand all the comments today.
I don't have anybody signed up to speak on this. Is there anybody present who wishes to be heard? Commissioners?
Well, I don't. I'll be honest. I really don't have a strong opinion. I'm not as upset by the conclusion to tear it down, and I'm not so compelled to say. I guess I'm in between, and I'd love to hear some other thoughts from those of us maybe with less, and with all due respect, with less ideological opinions about this. Just maybe some pragmatic opinions about it. Thoughts?
Can I have a thought? Can I make a thought?
Sure.
I've almost got run over a couple times outside of that chocolate box.
No.
It helped
Because you were walking to Bruno's and shop, I'm sure. Here's a thought. We're going to have 5 or 6 weeks before we get city council. Maybe this moves forward today, one way or another, and because this isn't a final vote, and if we can come up with something more, but again, that house is not going to be there forever. And it's a commercial street. There's other homes, but it's turning into offices. So I don't know. If I come up,
offices on the south side.
I know.
The properties along the north are residential.
I know. That's what I know. I agree, and we have one of them. So I don't doubt that. I think there's pluses and minuses to both. What you just said, there's no
question about that. I am the first person to acknowledge, as I have to you, that, having a commercial use with such limited parking creates some real special problems. The idea of people crossing Western, and we won't talk about the fact that they may be slightly intoxicated coming out of the Chicago Walk. The idea of crossing a busy street like that, coming and going to a property like this. This is not like the streetscape along Western further to the north, where they've lowered the speed to 25, and people come and go pretty regularly. It's problematic. I will acknowledge that.
But I do think, though, you could, with this wall we're talking about and parking, I think you could enhance the visibility on 36th Street if you did what we planned. So how you want to vote on it?
But the only way we could make that happen is if we put it all into one big PUD the way staff wants us to do. Right? That's the only way we have control over that.
Well, I guess, okay. I'm telling you what we're going to do. The owner's right back here. She's hearing what we're going to do. So
let me just try and move it. Okay, I think we know we are.
Great.
You've agreed to amend the application to leave the house. Is that correct?
Yeah. And I guess I can change my mind when we get to city council if we come up with some better ideas and talk.
You have 6 weeks. It sounds like to talk to Councilman Cooper, but at least in the nature of trying to see where we are.
Yeah, you won't be here all night.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval on SPUD 1171, subject to amending the application that the house not be torn down.
Thank you.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 22, subject to amendment to leave the house in place. Cast your votes, please.
Thank you.
It's approved.
Sorry it took so long.
Item 23 is an application to rezone 2400 Northwest 36th Street from R1 to SPUD 1180.
You sat through a lot today.
This has been an eventful meeting to attend. Matthew Radcliffe with Mass Architects, 1225 North Broadway Place, here representing the applicant and the tenant, the Oklahoma City County Health Department.
This was continued at my request at our last meeting so that we could have a chance to sit down and talk, not having any, problem at all with what they intend to do with this conversion of an elementary school that was closed as part of the Pathway to Greatness plan by the school district. So we sat down to meet with that in mind, that we wanted to be sure that the City County Health Department could make use of the property to do the things they wanted to do with it. We wanted to build them in a little bit of flexibility so that maybe things come along that they hadn't quite contemplated at this point. There would be the flexibility to do that. I recommended to them that they eliminate certain uses from the O2, including parking garages, parking lots as a principal use, some business support services, communication services, community recreation, dwelling use, and mixed use. They had made promises to the neighborhood that there wouldn't be any residential use of the property. Funeral and interment services, bed and breakfast, commercial lodging as in hotels, research services, and personal services general. We also agreed that the conditional special exception and special permit uses would be accepted out. They agreed, and they had added already language to the master design statement indicating that the currently existing parking and any additional parking as it's shown on our exhibit would be constructed in such a way and configured in such a way as to encourage internal circulation so that there wouldn't really be any reason or it would just be less convenient, I guess, for people to go around either by Altadena or Northwest 35th. They've agreed to close off the access onto Eubanks on the west side of the property, which is a residential street, and they're going to do that with simple, like crash gates, so that later, if it returns to being a school, it can be easily removed. The other things that we talked about were the signage, and they have a proposal to refurbish the existing sign and use it in its sort of enhanced state. It won't be any bigger. It'll be the only signage that's lit or internally lit, illuminated. The other signage, although it's not typically what we think of as wayfinding because it's going to be larger than that, it's really sort of intended to screen a school has so many doors you can choose, and so to direct people to where they want them to go. And it will be really visible only from the parking areas. It's not going to be signage that'll be visible from Northwest 36th Street. So I feel really good about where we've gotten. I think they feel really good about where we've gotten.
Yes,
I think
it was
we're there.
very productive conversations.
I really hope that, whatever other conversions of schools we encounter will go this easily and result in something that I think is going to be a real plus to the community.
I agree. It was good. Our master design statement wasn't very explicit with the specific uses that we were intending. So in being able to work with Ms. Powers, we were able to get that list so that it is a little more explicitly stated in there. So with all that, we feel good with where we've gotten.
And that's the list we received by email today.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I have one here if you...
I just want to make sure for the purpose of just putting it in the record that we...
If it included the personal services, did it?
Correct. Yeah, we had no issues with that other exclusion there as well.
So I'm not sure I've seen the emailed list.
Personal services is not included in the excluded uses.
So it's 8300.58 personal services general.
Yeah, that's
and
not...
it was just inadvertently
The email that we received today updating our packet did not include the exclusion of that use unit.
But we're going to add it now.
Got it. Okay.
But it is intended to be excluded as well.
It was just inadvertent.
Okay.
And it seems like it was something else. But, we're going to lower the height of this.
Yeah, as we were discussing the site screening, and again, just to kind of include everybody else in the conversation, the purpose was to not change the architecture of the building. And so these screens were proposed just beyond the building to help individuals and clients and business people as they come to the building to know kind of where to go and where not to go. As the Learning and Wellness Academy, we've got a couple different uses. There's a lot of after-school programs that are going to more predominantly use what's known as the auditorium entrance, and then they are putting some of their business uses within the building during the school hours to kind of keep the building occupied. That's more on the west side of the property. So this helps us sort of divide some of that traffic and move them around. So they're just simple screens, no power to them, no spotlights to them. And so as we were discussing before, we had them shown as 8 foot. We can bring those down to 6 foot. So we would make that modification just to kind of make sure that it doesn't become an eyesore to anybody else.
Anything else? Any other questions, thoughts, comments? If not, I'll take a motion.
Make a motion to approve SPUD 1180.
As amended, shall we say? And I can provide that list to staff to make sure they have all those.
Second.
With a motion and a second to approve item number, where are we, 23? As amended. Cast your votes, please. It is approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Items 24 through 27 have been continued. Item 28 is a resolution of the Planning Commission receiving the proposed First Amendment to the Northeast Renaissance Urban Renewal Plan, and it's recommending its approval to the City Council.
Hello. Give us your name and address for the record.
I'm Emily Pomeroy. I am a lawyer at the Center for Economic Development Law. We serve as general counsel to the Oklahoma City Urban Renewal Authority, 301 North Harvey, Suite 100. Thank you, Chairperson Powers and members of the Commission. The item before you is a resolution related to an amendment to the Northeast Renaissance Urban Renewal Plan. The city adopted this urban renewal plan in 2014 to assist in the stimulation of development in Northeast Oklahoma City. The city is now seeking to amend the urban renewal plan to include property on the northwest corner of Northeast 36th and Lincoln in order to help facilitate that development primarily on the parcel that's long been vacant right there on the northwest corner. So the only change that's before you in the amendment to the urban renewal plan is to add the little square of property that goes from Lincoln Boulevard over 2 blocks and up from Northeast 36th Street to Northeast 39th Street. And consistent with the urban renewal law pursuant to which the urban renewal plan was originally adopted by the city may amend an urban renewal plan after certain procedural steps have been taken, including a finding by the Planning Commission that the amendment is consistent with the comprehensive plan of the city. So this is a finding that the Planning Commission made prior to the adoption of the urban renewal plan by the city in 2014. And we're here today just at the behest of the city to seek an amendment that will allow for the inclusion of this property into the Northeast Renaissance Urban Renewal Plan.
And what exactly has prompted this particular amendment request? How did we get here?
The city has specifically reached out to the Oklahoma City Urban Renewal Authority to help in the city's efforts to develop that large vacant parcel that was formerly owned by the Commission of Land Offices of the state. So it's right there on the northeast corner, northeast corner of Northeast 36th and Lincoln. There's an intent there for a large public-private redevelopment project, and the tools that are provided by the urban renewal law and consistent with the provisions of the urban renewal plan are being sought by the city. So we, as the Urban Renewal Authority, are trying to walk through the procedural process that will allow for that to happen.
Commissioners, do we have any questions of Ms. Pomeroy?
Probably a silly question. We had conversation when we were looking at the Homeland and the fitness center about how it did not meet the Lincoln Boulevard code design. Is this going to fall into the same category as what was going to, they tried to require the Homeland to do? Being a 3-story building that fronted Lincoln and...
So this won't have any impact on the design or the land use at all. It's just expanding the TIF boundary, essentially. So
It's their capital stack. This is about making sure that part of the financing for the project at that corner is available. It wasn't included. This includes it. I'll just say what it is. That's what it is. It's about money. So it makes sense. I think we should support the project as much as we possibly could. Yeah. If this gets it the funding it needs to be a successful project, let's vote on this bad boy.
That sounded like a motion.
I'll second that bad boy.
There you go. Right. Let's go with that. Oh. Well, then I move the approval of item 28.
Second.
This is 28. I'm sorry. I have a couple of people who are signed up to speak if they want to speak. We're about to approve it. Garland Pruitt? No? Dana Brockway? No. We scared them off by... Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve item number 28. Cast your votes, please. It is approved.
Thank you.
Come back and see us. Okay, here I am. All right, so additional items, communications reports. Planning Commission committees, Planning Commission members. I'll go first. I hope that you're all planning to attend the boards and commissions session on the 31st.
Next Friday.
Next Friday.
7 a.m.
Get there early.
Civics in the Hall of Mirrors.
Yeah, which would be kind of interesting to have it in the Hall of Mirrors. I think that's all I have. Yeah, I think that's all I have. You go. Let's start on this end. You go last.
I took a little offense to the B team thing. I was thinking more 6-man, but.
No, that's fair.
All right.
I was frankly just referring to the chairmanship there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I had to let the public know it's going to be the B team.
Anybody else? Okay.
So I have one. So I was so honored last week. I was invited by the South Chamber to come to their awards banquet and present Matt Hinkle with the Citizen of the Year Award for the South Oklahoma City Chamber. And I'm serious. I mean this very sincerely. So they showed a video of Matt at that event, and it was awesome. It was very clear that the impact that he has made in South Oklahoma City is huge. And the number of people that were there to support him and acknowledge him and cheer him on and clap for him. He got a standing ovation. It's just very clear you made a big impact with those people. I'm a little disappointed that you didn't bring the award to sit in front of you today, just so that when addressed, people could, address you as, Mr. Citizen of the Year. But no, it was really cool, and I think you were well acknowledged for that, and I'm glad I got to be there, and it's just fun to see people who deserve it get recognized. So great job.
I think you should bring the video. I think we should see it.
It was awesome. It was hilarious. hilarious. I mean, you really should. It was, I don't know who put that video together, but it was extraordinarily well done. I mean, it really was. I mean, it's hard to make a video about mat riveting. This was riveting.
Congratulations. I think that's a wonderful thing.
It's a surprise award, so that they don't know, people don't know they're getting it.
I
And so
see.
basically they said, hey, look, you need to show up 30 minutes late, sit at this table by yourself, which is easy because I didn't have any friends, and wait until the video's called and then just come up to the stage. So here I go. No one knows who I am down there, and I'm going to walk up to the stage. Right, I'm surprised I didn't get tased, frankly. Maybe the suit kept me from getting tased, but... Yeah. Well, exactly. Oh, congrats again, Matt.
Yes, congratulations. That's wonderful. Okay, planning department.
I'm concerned about Commissioner Craven's parent complex with the B team and the no friends reference, but that's maybe a study session we can have. But really, I was going to mention, if you want to be there for breakfast, come at 7:30, and we'll start the program at 8 o'clock, and then we will have a study session at right immediately following the event, I guess. So that will be for Preserve OKC and only Preserve OKC, is my understanding. So we'll do that right after.
Wait. So that's going to follow the official Indian training.
Yes. Yeah. Does that not work for you?
That's what you get for asking for it. No, that's news to me. This is all news to me.
Normally we did those breakout sessions.
Yeah. I thought so too.
Skip, intro to commissions and committees, and maybe have that. But I didn't know. I'll try to move it. I just didn't realize it was going to extend. So.
Okay. Yeah. We talked about doing either direction, and it just it's difficult to do with the way the agenda was done, and then it's hard to tell how long that's going to take, and we just don't want you guys to miss. But if it's open for discussion. If you guys want to do it differently, we can certainly give it a shot. We could. Well, I think it's already been noticed.
If I'm the only one, I'll do my best to try to move it and be there so we can at least have a forum and have a meeting. I mean, I'll see what I can do. I just didn't realize I was scheduled at 2 o'clock.
Juggle. I did have actually something I wanted to say. I met with and I won't even be able to remember now, is it EPS, David Schwartz, yes. the consultant who's here. I'm sure you all got the information that was sent about the housing update and survey and all that sort of stuff. This is not my area of expertise. It's not something that I'm very familiar with. But I see this as a shift in the city's priorities and its long-range goals and so on. And with the inclusion of the items in MAPS 4 that were added to deal with these kinds of issues, I think it just behooves us as a commission to educate ourselves a little bit about how the process is beginning and how it's going to get started and how the information is being gathered. And what I've asked staff to do is just make sure that at this particular stage that commissioners are all aware that they have the opportunities to reach out if they want more information. They can, as the information is being gathered and processed and formulated into something like a report or a suggestion. I'm going to have them, come to us in sort of bits and drabs so that we don't just end up 2 years from now or 2.5 or 3 years from now with something that none of us understood how this happened, And I think the way to do that is just in bites as we go along. And I know that process of being involved with the many public meetings and, the outreach and the very different ways that they gathered the kind of community input that they gathered and other kinds of input that they gathered on Plan OKC was so helpful then once the actual bread-making part of it started happening, and you understood, why this got included and this didn't, and, the 20 meetings that you went to where people, this was very much on their minds and why it's a priority and that kind of thing. I think just to have that context is very, very helpful to a commissioner. So I just wanted to let you know that we'll be creeping along in that process. And I'm sure housing won't be the only one of those kinds of topics, but I think the easy way to educate ourselves is just in little bits and bites as we go along. So I'm asking staff to kind of help us with that process. Anybody else? Municipal Counselor's Office. Oh, I forgot Development Services. No, ma'am. No citizens to be heard, no other business. I'll take a motion to adjourn. I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned.